Chapter 49-20. Don't have any illusions about me. Arbor gazed at him coldly and enunciated each word clearly. We've long been finished. Xiao Qiao. Don't call me that. Arbor shouted at him sternly. He hid one hand behind his back and stealthily condensed water into ice, forming a sharp icicle. Your hypocritical appearance is truly disgusting to the extreme. Arbor revealed a mocking smile at him. When you had that bitch Lu Yizhi lead people to attack my holy water sect, did you ever think that your words wouldn't harm me in the slightest? Your so-called not harm me in the slightest is treating me like this. That's not it. Young Master Omega Kotoku anxiously stepped forward and defended himself with bloodshot eyes. You clearly know that I didn't instigate it, yet you insist on pinning all of this on me. You clearly know the reason in your heart. I don't know. Arbor shouted furiously in an agitated manner. You know. Young Master Omega Kotoku anxiously shouted. It was Lu Yizhi himself who acted out of selfishness to obtain the sacred water and joined forces with the 6 prefectures to encircle and annihilate your holy water sect. Did you know that I was also very shocked when I received the news? Even if I wanted to move against the 3 sects and 5 factions at that time, I wouldn't have disregarded your feelings. The second young master grabbed her wrist and forcefully shook her hand. Otherwise, why do you think I didn't interfere when that fellow Mo Lien wantonly encircled and captured the Shantian prefecture's people on Sikong planet? Because this Lu Yizhi was dishonest. He slaughtered the holy water sect out of selfishness. He deserved to die. At that time, the second young master hid in the shadows and coldly watched as this Mr. Lu was chased and beaten like a dog by Mo Lien. He also watched as he was ultimately refined into a mechanical puppet by Mo Lien. It was a tragic sight beyond compare. That was all because he, Lu Yizhi, brought it upon himself. Did he think that he wouldn't be subject to military orders because he was overseas? Did he think that he could disobey orders and do whatever he wanted because he went to the lower star domain? Facts had proven that those who did not obey the organization would sooner or later be killed by their enemies outside the organization. At that time, Omega Kotoku's forces in the lower star domain had also suffered a great blow because of Lu Yizhi. If it weren't for the Rakshasa ghost sect, he might have even lacked manpower to handle matters. Shut up. Arbor shook off his hand and took a step back. He grabbed the small round table behind him with his right hand and tried to calm himself down. With Lu Yizhi's status, he couldn't have come into contact with me at that time. Lu Yizhi only interacted with my foster father in the lower star domain because he coveted the pills my foster father gave him. Lu Yizhi wants the sacred water. Even if he obtains it, given his selfishness, it's impossible for him to tell me. The person he sent was one of my foster father's men. That's why you picked up an iron plate from the Qin estate. No matter what you say, you can't deny one fact. Lu Yizhi is your man, it's you. It's always been you. You made me suffer so much. Arbor raised his hand to his chest and lowered his head slightly. Do you know who captured and locked me up in my previous life? Who ordered them to study my inner world and my dantian? It's you. It's your subordinate Mu Qingya and your subordinate Fan Chioha. It's you, it's all you. Xiao Qiao. Young Master Omega Kotoku panicked and rushed forward with a big stride. In the blink of an eye, Qiaomu raised her right hand, and a sharp icicle that had formed abruptly stabbed into the second young master's chest with the speed of lightning and rolling thunder. Chapter 49-21. Young Master. Several hidden guards abruptly jumped in from outside, each of them furiously unsheathing the swords at their waists. Withdraw. Young Master Omega Kotoku berated them, and he couldn't stop a mouthful of blood from flowing out of his mouth. He tightly gripped her right hand that was covered in blood. When he met the little stoic's cold and heartless beautiful eyes, his heart trembled slightly. whether you believe it or not. I never thought of harming you. I've already heard enough of this. Arbor gazed at him coldly, his gaze revealing a ruthless contempt for the heavens. The little stoic continued expressionlessly as she twirled the icicle in her hand. If I told you to die, would you be willing to die? Bam! The Raksha princess kicked the door open and immediately let out a wolf's howl. You're all dead people. Why aren't you saving Master? The hidden guards all felt extremely aggrieved. They wanted to go forward, but their master's sharp gaze stopped all of them from going forward. Scram! Young Master Omega Kotoku berated in a low voice, his hand tightly gripping the little stoic's dripping blood. The young lady following behind the Raksha princess paled slightly, and she quickly walked up to salute. Young Master, your injuries are so serious. If you don't treat him, scram. Young Master Omega Kotoku shouted and swept his sleeve, sending that young lady and the Raksha princess flying out together. Bam! Subsequently, the cabin door was slammed shut. The Raksha princess and that young lady, as well as the hidden guards, were all blocked outside. The Raksha princess sighed. When she turned around and saw that young lady's teary eyes, she sighed and said, Xiao Ran ah. She patted Xiao Qiran's shoulder. I can understand your feelings. Sigh. This is the heart of begging but not being able to obtain. The Raksha princess sighed ruefully. That little foe of mine, when the Raksha princess thought of the person she begged but couldn't obtain, she couldn't help but sigh again. The hidden guards couldn't help but shudder in unison. Princess Luosha, how can you be compared to the 20-year-old Miss Ran? When you were chasing after that young and handsome cult master Ding, we only felt that it was an eyesore. When it comes to love, not everything will go according to one's wishes. Princess Luosha comforted Xiao Qiran with the tone of an experienced person. She patted her shoulder and said, all right, go invite Alchemist Ouyang over. It seems like our young master needs emergency treatment. Pa, Pipa. All the disciples of the Heavenly Fates sect looked down with cold sweat on their foreheads. None of them dared to look directly at the fat man who was being whipped while tied to the mast. With every lash, the fat on the fatty's body couldn't help but tremble a little. At this moment, the benevolent smile on his large face was no longer present. Instead, it was twisted and filled with resentment. Eldest young Sir Qin was sitting across from him, his long legs folded as he leisurely sipped from a cup of hot tea. His gaze inadvertently swept over the fat man, and the corner of his mouth hooked up into a mocking smile. Do you still think you're in the right? Everything this subordinate has done is all for you, young sir. Pa. The heavy lash caused his voice to abruptly stop. It was so painful that his face couldn't help but twitch violently. Qin Xian threw the teacup heavily at the old steward's feet and scoffed. For this young sir. Did this young sir tell you to use the people in the camp as experimental subjects? Chapter 49-22. Did this young master tell you to give the Fong siblings the mutated medicinal fluid? Not being disciplined and acting on his own accord. He must have done this under his father Qin Hong's orders. The little stoic's guess was correct. Luo Qizhong did it on purpose. He purposely experimented in the camp and left behind clues that others could see through. He purposely exposed his and second brother's true identities in front of the little stoic. This person was disloyal to him, so it looked like he couldn't be left alive. Old steward Luo shuddered, sensing that the eldest young master wanted to kill him. He hastily cried out, eldest young master, this subordinate didn't betray you. This subordinate truly did this for you, young master. Young master, didn't you notice? You and second young master have repeatedly made exceptions for this stoic. If this continues, this stoic will definitely spoil my heavenly fortune. Besides, she formed the allied army of the 3 provinces to deal with us. How can this subordinate tolerate this kind of person continuing to exist? He could only hate that the Fong siblings were truly useless. None of them could deal with the stoic. On the night that the Fong family's little brother mutated, you were the one who hid outside Xiao Qiao's tent and ambushed her with poison, eldest young Master Qin asked faintly as he looked at him icily. Luo Qizhong stiffened his neck and nodded stiffly. Precisely. He hated that stoic. She was so guarded and didn't follow the rules at all. If she had discovered the cup was poisoned that night and chased after him, he would have had a way to secretly deal with this damn girl. Unfortunately, she hid in the camp and used formations and concealed weapons to deal with him. As a result, she alarmed the two young masters. You poisoned her. Eldest young Master Qin sneered. Don't you know that she's a great pill alchemist? This was a little oddball who could challenge those above her level and kill a god-rank pill alchemist. The ignorant are fearless, and the ignorant are ill-informed. The eldest young master glanced coldly at Luo Qizhong. A hidden guard immediately leaped forward and raised his hand to slit old steward Luo's neck. Stop! A shout cut through the air. An air transportation spirit tools cabin opened, and the Qin estate's patriarch, Qin Hong, led several dozen subordinates and jumped down from the cabin and landed on the ship's deck. Qin Xian, you're really becoming more and more outrageous. Qin Yi coldly reprimanded, for that woman, you actually dared to kill your old steward who had followed you for more than 10 years. Eldest young Sir Qin gazed coldly at his father. Since father has taken a liking to this person, then bring him back. There's no need for him to continue to be a spy by my side and ruin the relationship between you and me. I don't need anyone who isn't loyal to me. Eldest young master. Disappointment appeared on Luo Qizhong's chubby face. The eldest young master was still too soft-hearted and too lenient towards that damn little stoic. No wonder the patriarch was extremely vigilant towards that stoic face and secretly ordered him to find an opportunity to kill that stoic face. Now, it seemed that this stoic face's influence on the two young masters was too great, and the family head couldn't afford to be vigilant. Qin Hong stared at Qin Xian for a long time, his eyes flashing slightly. He pretended to sigh helplessly and said, You and Xian have grown up. All these years, father has not been able to teach you well. Forget it. You can do whatever you want, but you mustn't ruin ancestors' grand plans. Otherwise, even father won't be able to save you too. Chapter 49-23. Old Luo, since eldest young master doesn't need you here anymore, you can stay by my side for the time being, family head Qin said indifferently. It just so happened that his right-hand man, Ague, had been killed in Yen City by that ruthless little emperor of Tsang province. He truly lacked capable people by his side, so he could trust old Luo's ability. Luo Qizhong had escaped death, so he naturally wouldn't have any objections to family head Qin. After he was untied, he hastily knelt down and kowtowed to eldest young master before silently retreating to stand behind family head Qin. He lowered his head and looked submissive. Qin Xian didn't say anything, but his gaze swept coldly over Luo Qizhong. Eldest young master was helpless when his father insisted on protecting steward Luo. At present, it wasn't to the extent of falling out with his father over such a trivial matter. Where's Xian? Qin Hong looked around and asked with a smile, I heard that you captured many elite disciples from various patrician families this time. Well done. Qin Xian stood with his hands behind his back and glanced at the unmoving eldest young master Qin. Father will go with you to Wangchuan clan's territory on this trip. Eldest young master Qin glanced at him indifferently. Father can resolve the matter of Wangchuan however you want. But please don't interfere with my matters in the future. Hearing his eldest son's insinuations, Qin Hong's eyes flared with anger, and he suddenly raised his voice. Speak clearly. For example, sending people to deal with facial paralysis by every possible means. You've assassinated and poisoned them. Father, please stop. Qin Hong flew into a rage and pointed at his son. That's right. It was father who ordered Steward Luo to eliminate that Chow woman. Her existence will only cause you brothers' minds to wander. This woman can't accomplish anything but spoils everything. She absolutely can't be left alive. Qin Xian sneered. Then why don't you try, father? Will the people you sent die first, or will father be the unlucky one? Qin Xian was so angry that his face flushed red. He pointed at his eldest son and couldn't say a word for a while. Since father has already handed over most of your matters to second younger brother, then you should enjoy your remaining years. Don't spend all your time doing these nonsensical and messy things. That's all I have to say. Father, please go ahead. After Qin Xian finished speaking, he swaggered off with his men, leaving his old father on the deck to stomp his feet, his face livid with anger. Unfilial son. Unfilial son. Qin Hong's eyes were filled with anger. It was as if their father wanted to harm them. Wasn't he doing this for their own good? What good could come out of leaving that stoic face here? This damned stoic face was truly the reincarnation of a star of misfortune. Every day, she would harm his two outstanding sons. She deserved to die. When family head Qin thought of this, a trace of ruthlessness appeared in his eyes. Second young master, don't come into contact with water for the next few days. The wound is still quite deep. As Yangsu bandaged second young master Qin's wounds, she secretly peeked at the expressionless Lord Chow Chow sitting on the side. Duga Ling's mouth twitched as he thought to himself, this little girl's bad habit of hitting people the moment she gets angry is really because she's been spoiled. Look at how he stabbed their family's second young master. The heavens took pity on him. Knock, knock, knock. Princess Luosha submissively pushed open the door and walked in. She bowed and said, Second young master, family head has arrived. He invites you over. Isn't eldest brother here? Second young master said impatiently. Chapter 49-24. A faint sorrow rippled in the Raksha princess's heart, and she hastily covered her small face with a silk handkerchief. She sobbed. Eldest young sir seemed to have directly contradicted family head again and parted on bad terms with family head. Second young sir, you should hurry over and take a look. The Omega Kotoku young sir was stunned by the Raksha princess's pretentious behavior. He couldn't bear to look at her and stood up, flinging his sleeves as he walked outside. Second young sir. Zhao Qiran stood outside the door and hastily called out when she saw the second young sir come out. Her beautiful eyes contained some worry as she looked at the second young sir's clothes. The second young sir had changed his clothes, but the way the blood vessels were surging just now it was evident that his injuries weren't light. You're not allowed to mention this young sir's injuries to outsiders. Yes. Everyone in the room nodded in agreement. The Raksha princess also cupped her hands in salute. The Omega Kotoku young sir coldly said, especially, don't talk nonsense in front of father. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. The second young sir's implied warning couldn't be any more obvious. That was, they weren't allowed to reveal that the little stoic had stabbed him today. The Raksha princess pursed her lips and turned to glance at the stoic young lady sitting at the table like a jade sculpture. Don't you have anything to say? The Raksha princess rolled up her sleeves and glared at Arbor while blowing her eyebrows. She threatened, don't think we can let you off just like this. You injured second young sir. Even if second young sir doesn't pursue the matter, we have plenty of people who will. Be careful. The Raksha princess warned viciously as she glared at Arbor with her red eyebrows and green eyes. A sharp glint was concealed in her eyes. Arbor glanced at this woman with exquisite makeup that exposed half of her fragrant shoulders. He only felt that her revealing clothes could only be described as coquettish. When she stared at Jojo, it made Jojo feel very uncomfortable. Also, the name Raksha Princess sounded especially familiar, but he just couldn't recall where he had seen it before. What are you doing? Looking at her expressionless face, the Raksha Princess couldn't help but be infuriated. Are you trying to say that you don't remember me? When we were in the Mystic Beast Forest, I didn't provoke you at all. But in order to save Sikong Fuling, that slut, you ruthlessly beat me up. Yes, I did capture you for revenge, but that was because you made the first move. What Mystic Beast Forest? Xiao Mu's pitch-black eyes contained a cold lightning glint as she stared deeply at her. Speak clearly. Ding Yun said that he had met her in the Mystic Beast Forest. Sikong Fuling also said that she would meet her in the Mystic Beast Forest. Now, this Raksha princess actually said that she had saved Sikong Fuling in the Mystic Beast Forest. What the hell was this? Stop pretending. You were blind at the time, but at least your brain was still working, and your memory was still there, right? Arbor expressionlessly looked at the Raksha princess, who was spouting nonsense in front of him. Suddenly, he swung his hand and heavily slapped the Raksha princess's face. This slap sent this old woman flying. She crashed into the opposite cabinet with a loud crash and fell to the ground with a flop. Dugaling, who had been watching the show from the side, couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he saw this scene. He was just about to remind the Raksha princess that this fierce lady's temper wasn't very good. She was like a firecracker that could explode at any time. You need to be careful with your words. Who knew? Chapter 49-25. She hadn't even spoken 3 sentences yet. I remember now. Arbor's eyes were like cold lightning as he faintly watched the Raksha princess, who was rolling on the ground and vomiting half a mouthful of blood. Before the Raksha princess could finish muttering fuck, in her mind, she met the little stoic's chilly eyes brimming with boundless killing intent. Her entire body abruptly turned cold, and she couldn't resist shuddering. This fellow recalled how she captured her in the Mystic Beast Forest and wanted to kill her. But didn't her Ding Lang run over at that time? In order to save this fierce miss, he even beat and scolded her as if his heart had been gouged out. Ouyang Su hastily stood up with his medicine chest, straightened out his clothes, and retreated to Dugoling's side. This alchemist Ouyang hugged his medicine chest and looked at the fierce miss with a murderous expression, then at the Raksha princess sprawled on the ground with blood dripping from the corner of her mouth. He was conflicted on whether he should treat his colleague first. The Raksha princess looked a bit wretched right now, so it was very difficult for him to pretend not to see her. Arbor pulled out a jade green vine whip and coldly gazed at the Raksha princess. You're that sister of Coitus Sect's granny witch on Sikong planet who has the same hobby. The sect master of Raksha Ghost Sect who likes to search for men everywhere and use them as vessels to suck their essence and mystic energy. Dugoling's mouth twitched. He looked at the Raksha princess's dumbfounded expression and felt that this matter should be rather hilarious. The matter the little stoic remembered definitely wasn't the same as the Mystic Beast Forest matter the Raksha princess was talking about. It's not. The Raksha princess looked at Arbor in bewilderment. I'm not talking to you. Why are you talking about Coitus Sect? Who's sisters with that old hag from Coitus Sect? The Raksha princess couldn't help but panic. What kind of freaking sisterly relationship could she have with that ugly old hag from Coitus Sect? Not only was this stoic face blind, she was also an idiot. Why was she spouting nonsense here? She really wanted to slap this stoic face to death. I'm talking to you about the Mystic Beast Forest matter right now. The Raksha princess raised her voice an octave as she shouted harshly. Arbor couldn't be bothered with the Raksha princess and continued, no wonder I felt that your name was so familiar. So it's you. Balon City, you sent people to capture Jojo's lotus. Do you still want to force her to marry you? The Raksha princess stared at the young crown princess in confusion. What the hell? Who wants to marry Jojo's lotus? The Raksha princess knew that she had walked through thousands of bushes without a single leaf touching her body. But at least she was a person with moral integrity. She wouldn't do anything like forcing someone to marry her. When the little stoic said this, her expression didn't change at all. Other than her small mouth smacking as she spoke, her other eyes and eyebrows didn't move at all. No, 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 what do you mean? You still want to deny it? Arbor suddenly stretched out his little hand and showed her one of the rings. Do you recognize it? Defensive thunder barrier. Princess Luosha's broken string was reconnected. You remember now, don't you? Arbor looked at her expressionlessly with a cold face. The Raksha princess almost vomited blood in anger. I say, can you not talk to yourself like that? I'm talking to you about the Mystic Beast Forest matter, so why are you freaking talking to me about Balon City? The Raksha princess clapped her hands in anger. How freaking long ago was Balon City? Can you freaking not talk nonsense like this? Why did she feel that talking to this stoic face was so tiring? Chapter 49-26. However, the little stoic's expression was serious. How long has it been since this matter was exposed? You sensual old thing, you want to forcefully seize Jojo's lotus to use as a vessel. Go to hell. The green vine in the little fellow's hand faintly emitted a flickering light. The Raksha princess felt like she was going to explode from anger. What was wrong with this guy? Could he still speak properly with her? It turns out that the idiot I sent to Balon City that time was killed by you. You freaking, originally, she simply wasn't aware of this matter. When she lost a top-notch spiritual weapon like the defensive thunder barrier, she was so angry that her chest felt stifled and she couldn't eat. Later, she sent the Snake Beauty, that unreliable fellow, to Balon City to search for the spiritual weapon, but she never said anything after that. She didn't expect it, she really didn't expect it. She didn't expect this spiritual weapon to be taken away by this bandit lady in front of her. And now, she actually wanted to settle accounts with her because of this Balon City lousy matter. If she could curse at this moment, the Raksha princess could curse all 18 generations of Jojo's ancestors as retarded fools. How did they give birth to such an oddball? Without another word, Arbor swung his vine whip at her face. Dugaling speechlessly shifted his position. Jojo, I feel that the Raksha princess doesn't want to talk to you about this matter. Can't you just let her finish her sentence? As a spectator, he felt anxious for the Raksha princess. She clearly didn't want to talk to the stoic about Balon City's matter, but she ended up being scolded by the stoic and inexplicably fell into a ditch. The Raksha princess rolled back and forth on the ground, dodging Arbor's fierce vine whip attacks. At this moment, she didn't know whether she should say 10,000 fuck-s in her mind. What are you doing? An angry shout came from outside the door. The Raksha princess was disheveled and filthy, and her hair was disheveled as she scrambled towards the person outside the door. Family head, save me. Seeing her sorry figure, Chin Hong couldn't help but be infuriated, and he kicked her out. Useless thing, you were actually beaten to this state by a criminal. His sharp old eyes stared at Dugaling, who was leisurely leaning on the side with his arms crossed. He scolded angrily, "Hall Master Dugu, what is the meaning of this? If a criminal refuses to be disciplined, doesn't your star-plucking hall know how to tie him up and put special shackles on him?" Dugaling smiled and said, "Family head, second young master didn't give the order, and Ling doesn't dare to go against master's wishes." Bastard! Chin Hong roared with a cold face. His sharp eyes stared at Arbor, as if a fire dragon was about to emerge from his eyes. Arbor! You're too presumptuous. How dare you act so presumptuously after boarding our Tianyun ship? Do you really think we can't do anything to you? Arbor glanced at Qin Hong coldly. Why don't you try? Qin Hong didn't expect her to be so arrogant and daring to contradict him in front of so many subordinates, slapping his face in public. His old face immediately contorted in anger, and he waved his hand and shouted angrily, "Tie her up." Duge Ling's eyes flickered, and he spun around to block Arbor with a grin. He flicked his sleeves and said, "Family head, this person was left behind by our star-plucking hole. Second young master hasn't given the order, so family head shouldn't casually comment." Qin Yi raised her hand, and a powerful airflow pressed against Duge Ling. Duge Ling's body swayed from the impact, and he pulled the little stoic back several steps. Qin Yi wanted to attack again in her fury, but second young master suddenly appeared and called coldly, "Father." Chapter 49-27. Qin Hong was furious. He turned to glare at the young master of Omega Kotoku. What? You still want to stop your father at a time like this? Did you not see the true face of this woman? Audacious, arrogant, and hateful. Father, are you trying to test where your son's bottom line is? Qin Hong's old face couldn't help but twitch. He was so angry that his mouth was crooked. Who the hell wants to test your bottom line? He really understood this kid's temper. If he really wanted to make things difficult for Arbor here today, this kid would definitely disregard the father-son relationship and embarrass his old father in front of everyone. If he couldn't even get out of this embarrassing situation, it would be even more unsightly. 1, 2, 3, all of them were unfilial sons. Qin Hong tried hard to suppress his bellyful of anger. Fine, fine, fine. Xan, you've grown up. You won't listen to your father anymore. But one day, you'll understand that everything your father does is for your own good. Qin Axian coldly glanced at her father and watched him leave in a huff. Only then did she turn to look at the expressionless Sir Jojo. In the end, she didn't say a word and led people to carry the bruised and swollen Princess Luosha out. Sir Jojo angrily slammed a table and scolded, "Preposterous." She wanted to teach the Princess Luosha a lesson, but so many people inexplicably rushed in. That old man Qin Hong treated her with disdain. She didn't know what was wrong with that old thing. Father. Duke Ziqin Qigong closed the door and quietly walked in. He respectfully bowed to Qin Hong. What do you think about the facial paralysis? Qin Chang lowered his head slightly and rolled his eyes. I think the crown princess can't be left alive. But big brother and second brother seem to be these two good-for-nothings. Qin Hong scolded angrily and said coldly, "Tomorrow, I will transfer the two of them away. You know what to do." Qin Chang's eyes flashed with a hint of smugness, but he didn't show it on his face. He raised his head to look at family head Qin, his eyes carrying traces of hesitation. What other difficulties do you have? Wouldn't that be too obvious? Qin Chang put on a fearful expression. If big brother and second brother come back and find out about this, then what are you afraid of? Family head Qin shouted coldly, "You're their younger brother. Could it be that those two unfilial sons would dare to make an example out of you?" Qin Chang curled his lips and thought disdainfully in his heart, that's not necessarily true. Do you think they are good people? Tomorrow, I will bring them to the Forgotten River clan to meet that young and talented clan head Ding. Clan head Qin sneered and said, "Make good use of this opportunity. As long as you can get rid of this facial paralysis for our Tianyun, we'll give you a special merit." But family head Qin said impatiently, "What other concerns do you have? Tell me everything. You can't achieve great things if you're too wishy-washy." This child, old seventh, was far from being as bold and decisive as old first and second. Why don't father send Dugaling and the others away as well? Family head Chin hurriedly shook his head. That would be too obvious. No way. It's just Dugaling. Can't you deal with him? Chin Chang couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Father, Dugaling has already reached the peak of the venerated immortal realm. I have no chance of winning against him. Family head Chin cursed inwardly for being useless and said coldly, enough. Chapter 49-28. Father will think of a way to transfer him away as well. In short, we can only succeed in this matter. Failure is not an option. Yes. Chin Chang lowered his head, a smug glint flashing through his eyes. This damned stoic face, I'll teach you a lesson this time. Father, you're not plotting something against Xiao Qiao, are you? After hearing family head Chin's words, the second young master stared coldly at Qin Hong, not giving his father any face at all. Qin Shui was fuming with rage. She gritted her teeth and said, why must I do this? I have plenty of ways to deal with that stoic face. Why must I do it so obviously in front of you? Qin Axayan glanced at her father in confusion, thinking that her father's words made sense. Qin Hong eased his breath and continued persuading, I'm bringing you along this time mainly to meet that family head Ding. After all, he just took over the entire Wangshuan clan and has many troubles. Since we've already discussed cooperation, shouldn't we go and express our sincerity this way? We can also strengthen our alliance. Since father is so sincere. Qin Axayan nodded and said, all right then, I'll go with father and let eldest brother stay here. Qin Hong felt a breath stuck in his throat, unable to move up or down. This was his good son, guarded against like guarding against a thief. Eldest young master Qin didn't say anything. He waved the folding fan in his hand and revealed a faint, carefree smile. All right. Qin Shui's face twitched with a fake smile. Then we'll leave in the afternoon. Young Master Omega Kotoku didn't have any objections. Indeed, he really wanted to go to the Wangshuan clan to see that vicious and merciless young Master Ding. After all, some cooperation matters were better discussed face to face. On the other side, Qin Chang looked at his father in bewilderment. What did his unreliable father mean by giving him a look that said, do as you see fit, before he left? Didn't they agree to transfer eldest brother and second brother away? What was going on now? He transferred second brother and De Guling away and left eldest brother behind. Did he want him to court his own death or court his own death? Was there anyone who did things like that? They agreed to lure the tiger away from the mountain, but in the end, they lured a tiger away. The afternoon sun was just right. Eldest young master yawned and muttered, I'm going to take a nap on the deck. Little 5. Eldest brother. Fifth young master Qin hastily walked to his side, looking like he was all ears. Pay attention to the little stoic situation. Okay, big brother. Seventh young master Qin gnashed his teeth in anger. Boss clearly doesn't trust me. His old father was really unreliable. He clearly knew that his boss was not someone to be trifled with, yet he still left him here and gave him a motherfucking look, telling him to act according to the situation. See his sister's machine, do his father's business. Qin Chang couldn't help but curse secretly. He lowered his head and looked at the medicine bag hidden in his palm. A trace of viciousness flashed through his eyes. A moment later, he sneaked to the outside of the little stoic's cabin and hung upside down by the window. He took out a tiny bamboo tube from his sleeve. Before he could even blow a mouthful of poisonous smoke into his mouth, he felt a heavy hammer smashing into his face, landing heavily on the bridge of his nose. He could even hear his nose break with a crack, and his entire body slid down from the window, landing in the sea with a splash. Eldest young Master Qin had ordered people to bring over a brocade couch, and he was currently lying leisurely on the deck. Chapter 49-29. Suddenly, he heard the sound of water splashing. Startled, he hurriedly sat up and asked, "What happened?" Several boatmen hastily dashed to the railing and looked down before exclaiming with an odd expression, "Seventh young master." Seventh young master fell into the water. Quickly bring a net over and pull seventh young master up. Seventh young Master Qin naturally didn't need something as embarrassing as a net. He took a deep breath and jumped out of the water with a splash, landing lightly on the ship's railing and landing with a leap. Eldest young Master Qin leisurely turned to glance at him and feigned confusion as he asked, "Though the weather is so cold." "Seventh brother, why did you go into the water?" Qin Chang knew that he had been tricked by that stoic face again. With a dark face, he clutched his half-broken nose and ran back to his cabin while groaning. Eldest young Master Qin chuckled and shook his head. "Young master, young master, young master." Ling Gu hastily ran over while holding a light purple crystal ball in both hands. The spirit testing ball reacted again. "There's a ship following us 70 nautical miles away, and it looks like the target is here. This ship has been following us since yesterday. It looks like the target is indeed our ship." The fatty brandished his purple gold hammer and harumphed. "Young master, how about we let this fatty go meet them first?" Eldest young Master Qin stared intently at that crystal ball before his gaze landed on that ship. The scene was somewhat indistinct, and he could only vaguely make out several slender and elegant figures standing at the ship's bow. Eldest young Master Qin stared intently for a good while before his lips curled into a smile. "Ah, they came rather quickly." "Ah. Young master, could it be that you know who they are?" Ling Gu asked curiously. "Fatty. Present. Come with this young master to meet them." A faint light flashed through the corners of eldest young Master Qin's eyes, and he turned to instruct fifth young Master Qin, "Xiao, order people to speed up and change the course. Go to the nearby Great Jubilee City and wait for us." "Ah. No, we're not returning to the headquarters," Ling Gu called out. Fifth young Master Qin didn't say anything else and nodded. "Got it, big brother. Be careful. Don't worry, I'll be back soon." Eldest young Sir Qin nodded with a grin. With a leap, he led Fatty and the others towards the pursuing ship at top speed. Ling Gu asked blankly, "Young master, does eldest young master know the people on that ship?" "You know him too." The zither cultivator frowned and said in a low voice. "I know him too." Ling Gu looked curious as she scratched her ears and cheeks and asked, "Young master, I am very stupid. I didn't manage to guess who it was." "Tsang Prefecture's monarch is here." Arbor was fiddling with a mechanical arm, its small hand supporting its chin, occasionally glancing at the window. Why couldn't he be sent flying with a single punch? It was so boring. She had punched him. Logically speaking, shouldn't he have fought back after all the setbacks? She had already prepared all kinds of poisons and was just waiting for someone to come, and Arbor touched the basin of powder on the table. She had placed the powdery items in the same basin, but they were clearly separated. There were 5 colors inside, and each color of powder stayed in its own territory obediently, not mixing with the powders of other colors. The 5 colors bloomed perfectly. "What a pity," the little fellow muttered quietly. Chapter 49-30. She had researched and developed her 5 yang intense poison for so long, but she still hadn't found a suitable person to use it on. It had to be a cultivator with a strong body. Otherwise, ordinary small cultivators in the profound realm and spirit realm would probably die if they inhaled just a little bit of the poison powder. What was the point of a trial then? Why didn't that brain-damaged 7th young Master Qin come? That blow just now had at most broken his nose. With his personality, shouldn't he have quickly jumped out to retaliate against Sir Jojo? Why was there no sound? Outrageous, you can't even persevere in a fight. It'll be hard for you to achieve anything great in this lifetime. Bam! After a huge quake, Arbor's cabin door suddenly collapsed from the outside to the inside, smashing heavily onto the ground. 7th young Master Qin, who had entered against the light, had a wicked smile on his face. He looked at her smugly and said, "Now no one can save you. If you kneel down and beg for this young master's forgiveness." Arbor's eyes brightened, and she picked up the basin on the table without a second word. With a splash, she scattered half of the basin's powder onto 7th young Master Qin. Midway, she thought that this half basin's powder might be too effective. This 7th young Master Qin might die in less than 3 seconds after being covered in this powder. Forget it, hurry up and catch some more. The little girl hastily hopped over and pressed the basin on the table with both hands. She flew over and repeatedly swept her sleeves, collecting more than half of the obedient powder. Even so, the dumbfounded 7th young Master Qin was still splashed in the face by the 5-colored powder. He raised his hand to wipe his face and roared at Arbor in exasperation, "Are you freaking sick? What kind of lousy thing did you throw at me? Ah ha 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 ha." 7th young Sir Qin rubbed his nose as he glared furiously at Xiao Mu. His originally handsome face was now severely contorted. "Little bitch, no one can save you today. 7th younger brother, what are you doing?" 5th young master rushed over in exasperation with his men. "Stop." 7th young Master Qin humphed coldly and turned to sweep a disdainful glance at the 5th young master. "Now that eldest brother and second brother aren't here, do you think you alone can stop this young master? A piece of trash like you dares to clamor in front of this young master. I really don't know where you got the guts." Qin Chang turned around and sneered at Arbor. "Are you scared now?" Arbor was stunned for a moment before he received an important message. Koto and Omega Kotoku were not on the ship. "That's really great. Men, tie her up with the spirit-binding rope. This young master is going to properly teach this bitch a lesson today." 7th young Master Qin extended 4 fingers forward with a sinister smile on his face. "She's clearly a criminal, yet she's always acting like a pampered missy. Who spoiled her?" Several extremely vicious subordinates of 7th Qin crept in from the entrance with several spirit-binding ropes in their hands. Many pairs of eyes stared at Arbor in front of them, trying to use the spirit-binding rope in their hands to restrain her. 7th young Master Qin couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed when he saw their furtive appearances. He roared at his subordinates, "What are you afraid of? There are so many of you, yet you're worried you can't deal with a small spiritual realm. Hurry up and go." He strode forward and was just about to punch Arbor's head with his fist when someone forcefully grabbed his arm midway. 7th Qin was startled and turned to look at 5th young Master Qin like he was looking at a ghost. Chapter 49-31. Qin Chang dazedly lowered his head and glanced at the 5th young master's hand that was twisting his arm. He widened his eyes in astonishment, and an egg could be stuffed into his mouth. Old Fifth's grip was so strong that he clearly didn't look like a weakling, all right. What was going on? Since when did Old Fifth's hands that played the zither and plum blossom change so much? He truly was a cunning guy. He had actually been kept in the dark the entire time and didn't know anything at all. 7th brother, do you know the consequences of today's matter? What consequences? I'm eliminating this woman for the organization and for the sake of the heavenly fortune. Qin Chang hooted. Don't you know? This woman has united the strongest factions in the upper 3 provinces and conspired against us in every possible way. You're stopping me from killing her. You're betraying our heavenly fortune. Qin Chang hooted loudly. Think about it, if this matter is exposed to the ancestor, how will the ancestor punish you? At that time, not to mention you, even eldest brother and second brother might be implicated by this matter. The more Qin Chang spoke, the more he felt that he was extremely reasonable. Wasn't that so? It was like this to begin with. He didn't choose to attack the little stoic because of personal grudges. He was completely doing this for the organization's great cause. For the sake of the entire Heavenly Fortune's future. Qin Chang glanced disdainfully at the fifth young master and snorted. Why aren't you moving aside? Do you think you can stop me with your skills? Actually, he was truly curious on the inside. Why did Old Fifth have this strength? He carefully sized up Old Fifth and couldn't detect any spiritual energy fluctuations on him at all. He was dying of curiosity, but now didn't seem to be a good time to ask. Moreover, his relationship with Old Fifth had never been good. Even if he asked, the other party might not be willing to tell him the whole story. Move aside. With this in mind, Qin Chang didn't dwell on anything else and forcefully shook off fifth young master Qin's palm. Ah, seventh young master. A servant on the side shrieked. This person's cry was short and unpleasant, as though someone was strangling him. Qin Chang was very impatient with being interrupted, and he shouted angrily, "Speak later if you have anything to say." Didn't he see that he was currently disciplining fifth Qin, that ignorant fellow? What kind of expression was that? Why was fifth Qin glaring at her with such astonishment? Just as this thought surfaced in the seventh young master Qin's mind, he saw the two servants at the side stumble back a few steps and repeatedly exclaim while pointing at him, "Seventh young master, you. Your head." Qin Chi's heart inexplicably thumped, and he hurriedly raised his hand to touch his head, muttering, "What's wrong with my head?" The burning sensation on his hand gave Qin Chang a fright. He quickly turned around and happened to see a mirror in the cabin. In the mirror, his head was completely enveloped by a layer of crimson flames, making him look extremely strange. Fire! Fire! Seventh Qin repeatedly stomped his feet. He pointed at his own head and said to the dumbstruck servant beside him, "What are you standing there for? Quick! Quick!" The servant came back to his senses and immediately nodded in understanding. She pressed her hands together and hurriedly released a thin stream of water, helping seventh young master Qin's burning head. She poured the spiritual water on seventh young master's head and helped him wash it. However, no matter how that servant poured the spiritual water, seventh young master's head was still enveloped by that ball of fire. From his neck up, seventh young master's large head was completely enveloped in a fireball. Chapter 49-32. He even discovered to his horror that his hair was emitting faint, beep 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 sounds. Inch by inch, his hair was being burned to ashes by an unknown raging flame. Fire, fire, fire. Duh. Can't. The servant staggered in fright and fell to the ground, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. His teeth chattered, and he even stuttered a bit when speaking. Old Fifth. Save me. Seventh young master was truly panicking this time. He finally remembered his fifth brother and promptly pleaded bitterly, Fifth brother. Fifth brother. Save me. Fifth young master glanced coldly at Qin Chang. He truly didn't know how this person could so shamelessly beg him. Back then in Phoenix Woods, when he broke his arms and legs, did he think of the slightest bit of kinship? Completely not, all right. Their relationship was already like fire and water long ago. But when it came to a matter of life and death, even someone as haughty as seventh young master Qin still had no choice but to submit and beg for mercy. He lowered his noble head to ask for help from this fifth brother, whom he had never taken seriously. Fifth young Master Qin only found it somewhat funny. Eldest brother and second brother had already warned him many times not to provoke the little stoic. Yet he refused to listen. Eldest brother and second brother weren't here today, so how could he save him with his abilities? Fifth young master coldly lowered his eyes and took a step back. This action instantly chilled Qin Chang's heart, and he glared at him furiously. Fifth Qin, you. Sparks abruptly emerged from his outstretched left fist, and his entire left arm was immediately surrounded by flames of another color. Qin Chang's expression was extremely colorful, and he shouted in alarm, use ice. Condense water into ice, hurry. The servants standing to the side gritted their teeth and charged forward with all their might. They raised their hands to release 2 or 3 water spirits, trying their best to stabilize the water flow and strenuously condense ice. In this world, not all cultivators could condense water into ice at will and transform the 5 spirits into any form. Evidently, these Heavenly Providence disciples weren't particularly talented. After struggling for less than a quarter of an hour, they couldn't continue condensing water into ice, and each of them collapsed on the ground with pale faces. At this moment, 7th young master's entire body was enveloped by 5 different colored flames. The 7th young master fearfully looked at the little stoic in front of him, whose expression didn't change in the slightest, and shouted in alarm, what did you do? That poisonous powder. Qin Chang's voice couldn't help but tremble as he recalled the half-basin of poisonous powder that was heading his way. You better stop now. If you dare to kill me, the ancestor will definitely not let you off. The little stoic swept him a chilly glance. Who in this world dares to stop me from killing someone I want to kill? The 5 yang intense poison tasted pretty good, right? You were the one who planned to poison Jojo first. Arbor coldly interrupted Qin Chang. Daring to do it but not daring to admit it. Didn't Qin Chang want to blow poisonous smoke into the cabin? What infuriated her was that the poisonous smoke that Qin Chang wanted to release was very unfriendly to the unborn child. Whoever dared to harm her child would have to pay with their life. If you're not as skilled as others, then just wait for death here. Arbor coldly threw down this sentence and turned to walk out the door. Slut. A trace of hatred flitted through Qin Chang's eyes. His entire body was like 5 balls of raging fire, and he charged straight at Arbor without another word. Since she had to make him die, then he would take her down with him. Chapter 49-33. After a light sound, Qin Chang abruptly felt pain in the back of his waist. His eyes widened in disbelief as his figure stiffened stiffly in midair. He was still 5 steps away from Arbor, and the person standing behind him with the greatest opportunity to attack him was a layer of icy coldness spread over his heart. He truly didn't expect that a weakling, who didn't have any presence in the clan, would actually suddenly kill him behind his back. Chi! A faint sound rang out. The 5th young master's sharp fingers pierced into his back, and they actually pierced through his stomach. His arm was like a piece of jade, so sturdy that one could only feel a chilly intent akin to ice. Qin Chang only felt dizzy, and the blood at the corner of his mouth couldn't stop dripping down. The 5 balls of flames that were originally enveloping his body slowly extinguished, as if they had lost all signs of life. Qin Chang turned his neck very stiffly, wanting to turn his head back to look at 5th Qin's handsome face that was always calm and indifferent. But when he turned his neck halfway, he could only watch helplessly as a spotless hand reached over and snapped his neck. A crisp crack sounded, as if a chicken's neck was being strangled. Qin Chang's head rolled down from his neck and landed on the ground. Blood spurted out from his head and it rolled all the way to the servants' feet. Those servants were truly scared silly, and their eyes could only stare foolishly at the 5th young master, whose upper body was drenched in blood. They had never seen such a young master before. He had clearly always been a gentle and elegant young master, but today, it was as if he had become a completely different person. When he killed someone, there wasn't the slightest bit of change in his eyes, which were as indifferent as colored glass. Ah! One of the servants finally reacted, and he scrambled to his feet on all fours to run towards the other side of the ship. The fifth young master didn't seem to move much, but his upright and jade-like figure had already arrived in front of that fleeing servant. Reaching out 10 slender, jade-like fingers, Qin Xiu grabbed that servant's neck and twisted it lightly. Crack! Crack, crack! A few minutes later, all of Qin Chang's servants were decapitated without exception. A few pairs of eyes stared straight in horror before they died. It seemed that even in death, they did not understand why the fifth young master, who had never fought for anything and was neither happy nor angry, would suddenly kill. Arbor was also dumbfounded. He subconsciously took a step back and looked at the fifth young master in front of him with vigilance and confusion. It was still that elegant and handsome young master, but his white robes were now stained red with blood. His pale face was somewhat transparent. When he saw the little stoic's unconscious retreat, more than half of the light in his eyes extinguished at once. Fifth young master Qin lowered his head to look at his 10 slender fingers, muttering to himself, "I'm not a monster." He took a sudden step forward, trying to get closer to Arbor. Arbor hurriedly took 2 steps back and yelled at him, "Don't come any closer." The fifth young master froze in place, and then he put his hands behind his back and rubbed them against his clothes. I won't harm you." Arbor was stunned for a long while before he finally found his voice. You drank the improved medicinal liquid. You accepted the heavenly fate's improvement. You. Chapter 49-34. She didn't know what she should say. Although he normally looked like a weakling, his brain could still be considered smart. How could he be this stupid? Didn't he know clearly what kind of good outcome would come from accepting the heavenly fortune's modifications? Didn't he know the outcomes of those modified test subjects? I just want to become a bit stronger. Little Fifth Qin said softly and walked 2 more steps forward, feeling ill at ease. Don't be scared. I won't harm you. Arbor didn't retreat any further, but her almond-shaped eyes were round as she glared at fifth young master Qin in utter disapproval. She truly hated iron for not becoming steel. She had never seen such a stupid person. Just for the sake of becoming stronger, he unconditionally accepted the heavenly fortune's modifications. Wasn't he a young master of the Qin estate's direct line of descent? Just what kind of perverted organization was the heavenly fortune? For the sake of a successful experiment, they were even willing to harm their own direct line of descent. Although little Fifth Qin's consciousness was still present, there was no guarantee that he would gradually degenerate into a killing tool in the future. Like a zombie, he would completely lose his consciousness and be without a sense of self. Could it be that he was willing to become stronger in such a meaningless manner? Don't worry, I won't become that kind of thing. The zither cultivator hastily waved his hand and took another step forward. He said uneasily, You should leave. Here, I'll take care of the aftermath. Arbor was a bit shocked. Earlier, she was planning to take advantage of the fact that Eldest Qin and Omega Kotoku, these 2 troublesome fellows, weren't on the ship to escape. She didn't expect that little Fifth Qin would actually be willing to help her escape from here. The little stoic dazedly followed up, then, I'll leave. What will you do? The fifth young master's eyes brightened, and a peculiar expression seemed to ripple through his black pupils. Don't worry, I have a way. You leave behind a few thunderfire bullets. Arbor took out a dozen or so thunderfire bullets and handed them to him. The fifth young master took the thunderfire bullets and looked up at her. After you leave, find a place to hide for a while. You mustn't linger on the surface of the river of forgetfulness. Eldest brother, second brother, and the others will definitely find you. Arbor had mixed feelings. He nodded and strode away. When she walked out of the dark cabin corridor, she stood at the end and couldn't help but turn around to take a look. She saw little Fifth Chin standing there far away. Half of his face cast a shadow over his handsome face, and his eyes looked exceptionally bright. It wasn't until the little stoic's figure disappeared from the ship's corridor that little Fifth Chin reluctantly retracted his gaze and lowered his head to look at the decapitated corpses strewn across the floor. Suddenly, he took out a dagger from his sleeve and stabbed himself. Boom! Large patches of fiery light spread out from the surface of the sea, dyeing this part of the sea red. Sparks of fire drifted along with the sea breeze, and the fire burned for an entire day and night. By the time Duan Yu's group's ship arrived, they could only see a small hole in the ship's hull. Under the flickering sparks, the ship's hull crackled in the wind. Duan Yu's expression instantly turned extremely grave. Search. On the surface and underwater, expand the search area for me. You must bring her back in one piece. He could sense Jojo's presence lingering here. This meant that she should have stayed on this ship for a period of time. His insides were burning, but there wasn't the slightest change on his face. However, those who understood this monarch knew that His Majesty's current mood was terrible, terrible to the extreme. Chapter 49-35. Young Sir. The maidservant standing guard outside the muslin canopy curtsied towards eldest young Sir Chin in unison. The eldest young Sir waved his hand and insipidly said, "Withdraw, all of you." He walked to the side of the bed and peered through the dark green canopy for a while. Until the fifth young Sir's feeble voice was heard from inside. "Eldest brother." Only then did eldest young Sir Chin stretch out a hand to lift the canopy and slowly walk over. "Are you feeling better?" He sat down on the edge of the bed and reached out to take the soup bowl that a young maidservant handed over. He opened the lid and lightly stirred the soup with a spoon. His eyes were calm, without the slightest ripple. Leaning against the head of the bed, fifth young Sir Chin's gaze quickly swept over his face. He hastily nodded and assumed the appearance of listening to an elder brother's admonishment. Eldest young Sir Chin smiled faintly. "Little fifth, why didn't you tell eldest brother that you took the improved liquid?" I was worried that eldest brother would object." The fifth young Sir probably didn't expect his eldest brother to be so blunt and direct. The words that had been lingering in his heart for a long time became stammering as soon as they left his mouth, and he only gave this dry reply. Clang! The spoon smashed into the soup bowl, and a few drops of soup splashed out. Eldest young Sir Chin set down the bowl and gazed coldly at this younger brother of his. He scoffed and said, "You knew that I would object, so you deliberately hid it from me and took the original liquid on your own?" I'm sorry, eldest brother." "You aren't sorry to me, you are sorry to yourself." Eldest young Sir Chin said coldly, "You chose the path yourself, so you must bear the consequences of the future alone. No one can walk down this path for you." He really didn't expect that his fifth brother, who had always been indecisive, would actually choose such a path. Not everyone had the courage to take Heavenly Fortune's improved liquid. This improved liquid was even more abnormally dangerous than the original improved liquid. 8 or 9 out of 10 people who ingested it would mutate. This was gambling with their lives. Fifth young Sir Chin stole a glance at the eldest young Sir again and stammered, eldest brother, don't be angry. Actually, my luck is quite good. There was a 90% chance of turning into a walking corpse and a 10% chance of developing a powerful special ability. Hadn't he gambled correctly? He had obtained a great power that he had never dreamed of before. In terms of strength and agility, they had all received an abnormal increase in all aspects. Now, even if he were to face an extremely vicious person, he would still have the strength to fight. Eldest young Sir Chin couldn't help but be angered into laughter. You really are a reckless gambler. Our luck isn't bad. Fifth young Master Chin muttered softly. Qin Xian looked at him deeply and suddenly changed the topic. Your second brother brought people out to look for her. This little guy's divine sense hasn't fully recovered yet. He shouldn't be able to run too far. Fifth young Master Qin's heart jolted slightly, but he nodded very indifferently on the surface. Have a good rest. Eldest young Sir Chin handed the bowl of snow lotus soup to him before standing up and parting the floor-length muslin curtain to slowly walk outside. When he reached the door, he slowly turned his head and glanced at fifth young Master Chin. I've already helped you erase the traces you left on the ship. You need to be more careful in the future. Fifth young Sir's heart froze, and he abruptly turned his head to look at his eldest brother. However, he saw eldest young Sir Chin leave without looking back after throwing down this sentence, leaving behind only his slender back view. Chapter 49-36. Omega Kotoku originally thought that he would be able to catch that troublesome little thing in less than 3 days. Who knew the group searched the sea for a total of 15 days but still could not find a single hair of that little fellow. It was not until 10 days later that second young master admitted that his search for Arbor had failed. Jojo had already escaped without a trace. That mischievous girl did not set foot in the Forgetful River clan's territory, nor did she go to the Great Jubilee City at the heart of the Forgetful River's economy. That little fellow had completely disappeared from the Forgetful River's territory as if she had evaporated into thin air. There was no sign of her presence at all. Omega Kotoku had reason to suspect that she had already recovered her divine sense and was probably hiding in her own star domain. Since this little girl intended to hide, it would be very difficult to dig her out. Even though second young master was extremely intelligent, he had to admit that this little rascal had slipped away right under his nose. No matter how intelligent those two from the Qin estate were, they would never have thought that Arbor would travel over 1,000 miles in one night and sneak into a small fishing village. For the past half a month, Arbor had settled down in this fishing village. During the day, she would cultivate and read books to recover her divine sense. When night fell, she would conceal her presence and quietly float back to the abyss of the sacrificial sea. The little fellow had been pacing back and forth at the entrance of the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Omega Kotoku still did not understand her character well enough. If he really understood Arbor's character like Jojo's lotus, it would be impossible for him to not see her for such a long time. Just like that, Arbor hid during the day and came out at night. For the past half a month, she had been waiting for Jojo's lotus at the entrance of the abyss of the sacrificial sea. The more she waited, the more anxious and disappointed she became. Occasionally, she would take out the condensed soul orb to take a look. When she saw the faint shadow of the ancient Mo Lien curled up in the soul orb and sleeping soundly, her heart could not stop beating wildly. Something had happened, something had definitely happened. If it was not for her rationality that firmly restrained her, she might have already jumped into the abyss of the sacrificial sea to find out what had happened. There were only about 100 families in this small fishing village. From one end of the village to the other, every family was very familiar with each other. These fishermen usually went out to the sea to catch fish before dawn. They had to return to the village before sunset. Otherwise, at night, the dangers on the surface of the sea would be unknown. At the crack of dawn, Xiao Mu returned to the fishing village. Mrs. Feng was already very familiar with her habits these days. In the first few days, Sister Feng was worried for a long time and persuaded her not to go out to sea at night. However, he soon discovered that this seemingly young girl was a very capable person. There was no need for him to worry about her at all. Thus, he gradually relaxed. Arbor walked into the village expressionlessly with a big-headed fish in his hand. When the fishermen saw her, they all smiled and greeted her out of habit. "Little doctor, you're back. Little doctor, you've caught another big fish today." This little doctor was really a strange person. Every day, he would go out to sea in the middle of the night and come back with a fish in his hand. It was not much, just one fish. However, there were only 4 or 5 people in Feng Chi's family. Such a big fish was definitely enough to eat for a day. Everyone could not help but envy Feng Chi. Back then, when the couple took in this young madam of unknown origin, they had secretly laughed at her. The world was so difficult. Who didn't hide some food in the cellar? How could they have extra food to entertain guests? Chapter 49-37. Only Feng Chi and his wife were foolish enough to take in this pregnant woman of unknown origins. But now, it seemed that Feng Chi and his wife weren't foolish at all. They were simply too shrewd. After interacting with her for a while, everyone in the small fishing village knew. Not only was this young madam exceptionally exquisite and good-looking, but her medical skills were also superb. She read and practiced during the day and wandered out to sea at night. At daybreak, she would bring some food back to Feng Chi's family. Sometimes it was a large fish, and sometimes it was some sea shrimp and crabs. Feng Chi's family's simple life was getting better and better. When Arbor entered, Madame Feng was standing up with their 3-year-old son, Mao Mao, in her arms. When Mao Mao hazily saw the little stoic enter, he scampered over and raised his small hand to rub Arbor's stomach. "Good morning, wife." Arbor, Madame Feng's mouth twitched, and she laughingly scolded him for being a brat. She walked up and carried her son to wash up. "Little physician, don't mind them." The day before yesterday, old Uncle Wang from next door was teasing Mao Mao, saying that if the little physician was pregnant with a girl, Mao Mao would have a wife in the future. I didn't expect this child to remember it and still think about it even now. Madame Feng was laughing uncontrollably. Arbor expressionlessly glanced at Madame Feng and her son before hanging the big-headed fish on the rack. "Sister-in-law, I'm going to sleep." After all these days, Madame Feng had long figured out the little stoic's work and rest habits. She hastily nodded and replied, Okay, I'll call you for lunch. Steam this fish today. It looks quite plump and delicious." After Mao Mao finished washing his hands, he scampered back to Arbor's side. He raised his small hand and pressed it against Arbor's stomach, caressing it again as he muttered, "Wife." Arbor's brows suddenly creased. He felt as if a layer of energy suddenly flowed out from his stomach and was about to hit that little imp. The little stoic's eyes were sharp and her hands were nimble. She swiftly lifted Mao Mao up with a flick of her slender hand and pressed down a layer of divine energy, completely blocking out that sudden attack. Boom! The opposite wooden shelf suddenly fell apart, and the big-headed fish that was originally hanging on the shelf also fell to the ground with a dong sound. Her voice attracted Mrs. Feng's attention. He looked at the scene in front of him in surprise. "What? What's wrong?" "I'm fine." Arbor put down the adorable Mao Mao and said with a wooden face, "The wooden frame suddenly fell down just now. Fortunately, it didn't hit anyone." Madame Feng was startled. She reached out to take Mao Mao, hugged him, and patted him gently. She muttered, "Last time, I told him to strengthen the wooden utensils at home. It's fine, it's fine. Don't be scared." Arbor turned around and glanced at the mother and daughter. Then, he turned around and entered his cubicle. His expression suddenly became very serious. The little stoic placed her small hand on her stomach and stroked it before saying seriously, "Baby Mo, Mom is telling you, you can't bully other children in the future. Furthermore, you can't use such a powerful force recklessly. Xiao Qiao was also astonished. As expected, this little brat of hers was precocious. He could unleash his power even through her stomach. If she hadn't reacted quickly just now and snatched Mao Mao away to block that powerful force, the consequences would have been unthinkable. How could Mao Mao end up well after being hit so harshly by her own brat? Chapter 49-38. If other children say things you don't like to hear, you can reason with them. Arbor felt her stomach heat up slightly, and she raised her hand to rub it. She was baffled but also inexplicably amused. The previous few times, her stomach would react from time to time. At that time, she thought it was her imagination. She didn't expect this little brat's precognitive awareness to be so strong that he could even perceive the outside world now. Even Arbor couldn't estimate how powerful his divine sense was. Actually, this feeling of having someone by her side really wasn't bad. She originally thought that after Jojo's lotus left, Jojo would be all alone. But now, she discovered that the one in her stomach would occasionally react strangely. Of course, this fellow's ideology hadn't fully formed yet, so his actions would sometimes be a bit out of line. However, Jojo was still very happy. Be good and don't randomly beat other children in the future. After you come out, Mother will take you to eat all the rare delicacies in the world and see all the mountains and rivers, the little stoic prattled as she raised her hand to rub her stomach to appease him. Strangely enough, this little fellow seemed to understand her words and slowly calmed down. After that slight heat disappeared, Arbor checked the pulses of both her hands worriedly. Everything was so normal that it was a bit comical. It was said that a woman's first trimester needed constant attention, so it definitely wouldn't be too smooth. What Arbor wanted to say was that she didn't feel anything at all. She ate, slept, and did whatever she needed to do. She never vomited like other people during their first trimester, and there wasn't anything she could or couldn't eat. She seemed to be able to eat everything. The key was whether she liked to eat or not. Baby Mo was definitely an excellent little fellow, Arbor thought to herself. She rubbed her stomach and was about to lie down on the bed. Then she heard the sound of a door being kicked open. Little Physician, where is Little Physician? Little Physician, quickly ask Little Physician to save him. Brother Fong encountered a sea shark and was bitten. Just as Arbor sat up, her black pupils couldn't help but contract. She reached out to pick up a small black butterfly that had flown in through the wooden window, and her figure abruptly disappeared into the air. Madame Fong came with the messenger and knocked on Arbor's door. After patting for a long time without any response, the person who came flew up and kicked the door open. The two of them rushed in and took a look. They couldn't help but be stunned. There was no one in the room. The young doctor was nowhere to be found. He was here just now, Madame Fong muttered to herself. Arbor's figure flashed to the west of the fishing village and jumped toward the beach. Just now, the poison-tailed butterfly had sent a message saying that the Omega Kotoku was here. She didn't know if Omega Kotoku was lucky or if Arbor was unlucky. The two young masters of the Qin estate were already planning to return to shore, so they passed by this small, shabby fishing village on the way. Second young master suddenly had a thought and wanted to come up and take a look. He did not know why he had such a strong thought. At this moment, he just wanted to enter the fishing village and take a look. More than a dozen ships of heavenly fate were docked near the fishing village. A group of people was disembarking from the ships when they suddenly paused. Omega Kotoku narrowed her eyes and looked up at a large flying spirit tool in the air. Ha! Eldest young Master Qin shook his head with a smile. This Zhangzhou's emperor is truly a lingering spirit. Duanyu, this guy, chased after them again. Was he crazy? They already said that the stoic was not with them, so why did he keep chasing after them and be an eyesore? Second young master's expression abruptly changed, and he abruptly flew out. The little stoic was definitely here. Chapter 49-39. Eldest Chin glanced at his departing younger brother and calmly waited for the group of people to disembark from the flying spirit tool while fanning himself with an ink-painted mountain and river fan. Duan Yu had just landed with several hidden guards from the secret pavilion when he saw Eldest Chin walking up to them with a grin. "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. I didn't expect to be so fated to meet your majesty again in this kind of obscure fishing village." Eldest young sir was grinning on the surface, but he inwardly cursed all 18 generations of Duan Yu's ancestors. Scoundrel idiot. He must have used some despicable method to plant some strange item on Duan Yu's body to track their footsteps here. Duan Yu expressionlessly glanced at him and raised his hand, causing several shadows to scuttle in all directions of the fishing village. "Humph, you think we will fall for your trap just because you obstructed us and said some useless nonsense?" Eldest young sir rolled his eyes several times and said with a fake smile, "Your Majesty is overthinking. Xian didn't mean that." Scram. Eldest young sir, why the heck didn't he want to talk to the person in front of him? After Duan Littleforth freaking became the emperor, he was becoming less and less human. Duan Yu couldn't be bothered with him and directly bypassed Qin Xian, who was blocking him, to direct the group of hidden guards. "Turn over every inch. Turn over every inch of land. Just kill whoever dares to obstruct us." Eldest young Sir Qin harumphed inwardly and slowly paced behind Duan Yu, nagging along the way, "Your Majesty, don't distrust people. I'm telling you, the little stoic really wouldn't stay in this kind of ghastly place. She's such an active person. How could she stay in this kind of lousy village that doesn't even have a snack street?" Duan Yu silently glanced back at eldest young Sir Qin before moving toward the back of the village. Eldest young Sir Qin's eyes flashed, and he also shot over like a bolt of lightning. He cursed in his mind, "It looks like today's battle is unavoidable." He didn't know how many people Duan Yu brought over, and he didn't know what the odds of Heavenly Fate's disciples winning were. At the same time, young Sir Omega Kotoku had already rushed to the west side of the village, near the beach. "Jojo. I see you. Stop hiding." Second young master said coldly, "Come out. Let's have a good talk." It was quiet all around. The only response that second young master Qin received was the sound of waves crashing against the shore as they pushed forward layer by layer. Qin Axian looked around and suddenly raised her hand to release a Saint Power barrier. The four walls formed an invisible cage, firmly confining the area. However, even after a long while, the sealed area was still empty. Nothing had appeared. Omega Kotoku took a deep breath and quickly moved to the seaside. A trace of lightning spirit energy shot out from his fingertips. As soon as the thunder spirit entered the water, it slithered forward like an electric snake, emitting sizzling sounds along the way. Arbor was hiding in the depths of the sea. Naturally, she saw that the electric current released by the second young master was chasing after her through the ripples. Bastard! Still not giving up on trying to catch Jojo. Infuriated, Lady Jojo drew talisman projections in the water, completely concealing her presence and hiding in the sea. 36 void concealment talismans completely concealed her figure. No matter how the electric snake shuttled back and forth in the water, it still didn't discover Arbor, who was just inches away. Lady Jojo was inwardly smug. "Lady Jojo has entered the water, yet you still want to catch me. Simply a fantasy." Chapter 49-40. He was just about to stealthily dive another 10,000 kilometers so that Omega Kotoku wouldn't be able to find him. Suddenly, he heard eldest young Sir Chin's chuckling voice. Your Majesty, I said there's no one here, but you didn't believe me. Look, look. It's empty all around. How could there be anyone here? Duan Yu cast a sidelong glance at the eldest young Sir before his gaze landed on the water. He was still musing in his mind. It's true that Charles Scent is here, which means that this little fellow definitely came here before. Besides, she's good at swimming, so could she be hiding underwater? Go. Don't dilly-dally. Go. Go. Urging voices rang out one after another, interspersed with the wails and cries of the village women and children. Duan Yu turned around and saw a short and stout wintermelon wielding a purple-gold melon hammer leading a dozen or so disciples of the Heavenly Fate Academy. They were ferociously reprimanding the villagers from one end of the village to another as if they were herding ducks. The villagers' wails shook the heavens. Arbor could hear them vaguely from underwater, but she couldn't help but be enraged. As expected, this scoundrel Omega Kotoku was using the villagers to threaten her to show herself again. Duan Yu coldly glanced at eldest young Sir Chin and bluntly reprimanded, "Your methods are extremely despicable." Anger flashed in eldest young Sir Chin's eyes, and he turned to glare at that short and stout wintermelon. Why did you escort so many villagers over? This subordinate felt that since that little stoic wasn't willing to show herself, then, acting on your own initiative. Eldest young Sir Omega Kotoku sternly reprimanded. Duan Yu snorted. Don't be pretentious. If it weren't for one of their orders, why would this short and stout wintermelon man act on his own initiative and escort so many villagers over? The second young Sir sent a look at Dugu Ling beside him. The latter chuckled and suddenly threw a fire net at the two hidden guards of the secret pavilion with a flip of his hand. With a whoosh, the fire net that had suddenly formed suddenly covered the heads of the two shadow guards, firmly imprisoning the two of them. Although the two secret guards who were caught in the fire net were shocked, their expressions did not change at all. One of them held a dagger and used one hand to draw the fire net, while the other used the water spirit energy in his hand to attack the net. Dugu Ling's cultivation was above the two of them. With their strength alone, there was no way they could break free from the net. At the critical moment, a silver-white flame suddenly landed on the layer of fire net, directly engulfing the fire net, releasing the two secret guards. At the same time, a harsh glint flashed across Duan Yu's eyes, and he raised his hand. With a bang sound, dazzling fireworks scattered in the sky, forming the word "song." Eldest young Sir Chin couldn't help but smile wryly on the inside as he grumbled inwardly about his second brother's eagerness for success and instant benefits. He just knew that ever since Duan Yu became Tsang Prefecture's monarch, he could no longer treat him as a person. Just look at his bad temper. Without saying a word, he asked for reinforcements. He was too lazy to talk nonsense with them. In less than a moment, dozens of giant air transportation spiritual tools flew over from nearby. From the looks of it, each air transportation spiritual tool could accommodate at least 300 people. In this way, the number of people on Tsang Prefecture's side perfectly overwhelmed Tianyun's side. Gathering firepower and starting a gang fight at the slightest disagreement simply suited Fourth Duan's personality too well. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Whoosh, whoosh, the air transportation spiritual tools stopped above their heads. Immediately, people opened the spiritual tool cabins and rapidly descended from the sky. Chapter 49-41. Duan Si gathered 5,000 helpers in minutes, and a dense mass of heads gathered in front of Omega Kotoku and eldest Chin, causing them to frown incessantly. When they saw the other side expressionlessly taking out divine stone cannons from storage talismans, they were stupefied. Everything before them shouldn't be real, right? Duan Si, this fraud, was quite a fraud. Did he already prepare to start a war with their Qin estate beforehand? That's why he gathered so many divine stone cannons and planned to fire a big shot at them. Duga Ling's grinning expression couldn't help but change, and he inwardly cursed, pervert, as he swiftly retreated to Omega Kotoku's side. Fire! Duan Yu decisively threw down this word. Eldest young Sir Qin twitched his mouth. When he saw the dozens of divine stone cannons, he turned the cannons and fired at them in unison. This guy didn't care about his image anymore and immediately tossed aside his fan to scamper away. The villagers screamed in panic under the bombardment of the divine stone cannons. They hugged their heads and squatted on the side, praying for the blessings of the gods and Buddhas. Eldest young Sir Omega Kotoku sneered as he dodged a cannonball fired at him. Duan Si, you're becoming more and more ruthless nowadays. You don't even care about the lives of these little villagers? Hypocrite. Duan Yu's expression was icy as he interrupted him. I already felt that you were very suspicious when we were in Phoenix Grove. Sure enough, you're a bunch of people harboring evil intentions. Didn't these people from the Qin estate want to use these villagers' lives to threaten Jojo just now? Now, they were pretending to be benevolent, righteous, and virtuous people, and they even put on an expression of crying injustice for the common people. The feeling of being bombarded by divine stone cannons isn't bad, right? Second brother. Eldest young Sir Qin shouted from afar. What were they waiting for if not to run now? Duan Si, this guy, clearly came prepared. Look at how many people he brought, and there were even divine stone cannons as a backup. They definitely wouldn't end well if they stayed. However, Omega Kotoku was unwilling to resign to this. He could clearly sense that the little stoic was nearby, but he had to give up now. Boom! Omega Kotoku's expression turned ugly as he dodged a few god stones. His eyes narrowed slightly. He would remember what Duan Si had done. Second brother, aren't you leaving yet? After running for a while, eldest young Sir Qin couldn't resist looking back. At this moment, he saw another large group of air transportation spiritual artifacts flying over from afar. It was clear how much of a scam Duan Yu, this black-hearted guy, was. There must be a lot of Zhangzhou disciples in the nearby sea area. After Duan Yu released the signal, they all swiftly gathered and rushed over. This was the second batch of Zhangzhou Dark Guards. Perhaps there would be a third and fourth batch after that. Go. At eldest young Master Qin's command, all the Heavenly Fate disciples hastily put away their weapons and hastily turned to run towards the beach on the east side of the village. Their ship was docked there, so they should quickly board the ship and escape. After all, even if he couldn't afford to offend them, he could still avoid them. A trace of fury flitted through Omega Kotoku's pitch-black eyes. After running for a while, he suddenly sensed something and turned his head back. With this glance, he saw a figure burrowing out of the water with a splash. Like a lively little mermaid, the figure swayed its legs as if it couldn't withstand the water pressure around it at all and easily swam up from the depths of the sea. A head emerged from the water. As soon as Omega Kotoku stopped, the dozen or so divine stone cannons behind him fired at his feet. Chapter 49-42. As he cursed in his mind, he had already leaped into the air, having no choice but to scramble upwards. When he turned back to look, he saw Duan Si, that swindler, flying to Jojo's side in a flash. He took out a thin blanket from his inner world and wrapped it around the little stoic, who was looking up at him. He picked her up at once and heaved a long sigh of relief. Fury flitted through Omega Kotoku's eyes as he cursed inwardly, why do I find this Duan Si more and more annoying the more I look at him? Afterwards, he couldn't continue watching, and a series of divine stone cannons blasted second young Master Qin away with a series of booms. When he returned to the ship in a huff, he saw Qin Xian looking at him with a spurious smile. What are you laughing at? Don't think that you're smart. The others aren't easy to deal with either. Look at Duanyu, this swindler. He had both men and cannons. How thoroughly prepared he was, waiting for them here. Omega Kotoku was furious. He fiercely glared at Qin Xian, feeling abnormally uncomfortable in his heart. She was so close. Even at such a close distance, he still couldn't catch her. He still let her slip away right before his eyes. Simply utterly abominable. Eldest young master, second young master, the people from Tsangzhou are chasing us with sacred stone cannons. Fuck this bunch of lunatics. Eldest young master Qin rolled his eyes at the sky and hastily said, now isn't the time to shed all pretense of cordiality with them. Hurry and leave. Don't just stand there, set sail, leave. Go go go. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, the sacred stone cannons fired non-stop. Young Master Omega Kotoku and his men's ships were all blasted out of the sea and fled for their lives from the shore. On the other side, Duanyu looked down at the little stoic's expressionless face and reflexively rubbed her head. It was only when he saw that the little stoic was safe and sound that his heart finally set at ease. The emotions that had been burning for so many days finally stabilized. He reached out and wrapped her in the thin blanket, wiping her wet hair as he did so. The silver flame in his palm flickered faintly, and in the blink of an eye, he dried the little stoic's clothes under the blanket. Duanyu. The little stoic glanced at him aggrievedly. Jojo's Lien is missing. Duanyu's heart sank. What happened? Come up first. He pulled her to the shore and looked down at her. Jojo's lotus and rotten peach blossom were tricked into the abyss of the sacrificial sea. Jojo has been waiting for them at the entrance, but they didn't show up. The little stoic became downcast as she spoke. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that his recent days were incomparably miserable. He couldn't open his star domain, couldn't find his friends, and couldn't wait for Mo Lien and rotten peach blossom. He didn't even know where they were. Most importantly, he was being chased by that perverted Omega Kotoku. Don't be afraid. Duanyu said in a low voice, no matter which corner of the world this swindler scampers to, I can help you dig him out. Arbor nodded, and his heart instantly felt a bit more at ease. Do you think something will happen to him? The little stoic tried to find a topic to talk about. Actually, how would Duanyu know even if he asked? At that time, she had at least seen Jojo's lotus through the phantom image of ancient Mo Lien's soul. Duanyu was thousands of miles away, so it was even more impossible for him to know the situation. The little stoic lowered her head. Suddenly, a warm hand caressed her head. Silly or not, no matter who gets into trouble, nothing can happen to Mo Lien. Why? Haven't you heard? Scourges last for 10,000 years. Chapter 49-43. Arbor blinked, feeling that Duanyu's words made sense. After all, Jojo's lotus was a person of great fortune no matter how one looked at it. She couldn't be paranoid and scare herself. She had to firmly believe that Jojo's lotus would definitely return. But no matter how she comforted herself, her anxious and uneasy emotions didn't diminish in the slightest. It had already been so long, so Jojo was very worried. A shadow flashed, and the dull-witted Mo abruptly popped out from Arbor's side. During this period of time, Jojo's mood was uneasy as ancient Mo Lien was in a deep slumber inside the Soul Pearl. Mo would come out from the storage talisman every day. She didn't speak much and just quietly sat there with the little stoic. Sometimes, she would follow the little stoic around the village to treat patients. Other people couldn't see her half-wisp of soul form, so she would walk around the stoic. She watched the little stoic administer acupuncture and medicine, watched the little stoic treat patients. After watching too much, this dull-witted fellow would occasionally ask a few questions. When Arbor saw her swaying out, he reflexively raised his hand to rub her head. Mo was also a lonely person. Sometimes, when the little stoic looked at her, she would occasionally feel a bit of heartache. When she thought of how she once wandered alone in that isolated river of time and space for so long, she would deeply feel heartache for her. In the past, she was also like this. She had no friends, no family, and even nothing. Medicine. Mo dazedly followed beside her and spat out a word. Duan glanced sideways at her. Jojo, this faintly discernible soul body seemed to be very unstable, as if it would dissipate into the air at any moment. My good friend, Mo. Arbor grabbed Mo's hand and asked placatingly, what medicine? Medicine. Mo tilted her head, seemingly trying to express something with great effort but unable to. Thus, she kept wandering around Arbor like a headless fly. Were you feeling unwell? When Arbor asked this, he couldn't resist rolling his eyes at himself. Mo was a soul body, so how could she feel unwell? It was simply hilarious. What are you trying to express? Don't worry, think slowly. It won't be too late to tell me when you can express it. Mo understood Arbor's words and nodded seriously. His expression was a little funny. Jojo. Duan smiled at her. Right now, halfway through his words, he glanced coldly to the left. Mrs. Fong hugged Mao Mao and took a few steps back in fright from the man's cold gaze. She hurriedly hugged Mao Mao tightly in her arms and shrunk her neck. With a face full of fear, she stammered, little doctor. When the noble young man beside the young doctor gave the order to use the Godstone cannons to attack those young masters, he didn't care about what the others would do. The terrifying aura of a superior being assaulted him. Mrs. Fong muttered in her heart, when I first picked up this young doctor, I already felt that she wasn't an ordinary person. How could an ordinary person have such an exquisite little face that was made of snow? It's okay, sister-in-law. It's okay now. Arbor stepped forward and comforted the mother and son. What happened to Mao Mao's hand? I tripped when I was running earlier. It's nothing serious. You'll be fine soon after washing it and applying some medicine. Arbor raised his hand to wash the child and apply medicine, but Mrs. Fong seemed to be frightened and hastily took another step back. Chapter 49-44. Arbor's small hand paused in midair, and he paused for a moment before handing a small porcelain bottle to Madame Fong. Then, wash the child and apply the medicine. Madame Fong knew that her distant action just now was a bit hurtful, so she smiled at Arbor in embarrassment. Thank you, little physician. Xiao Mu nodded, her expression calm and indifferent. We will leave immediately. Thank you for your care this past half a month, Madame Fong. I'll leave some rice for you guys, I hope you don't dislike it. After saying this, Arbor nodded at Madame Fong before turning to walk to Duan Yu and whispering, let's go. Okay. Duan Yu turned around and gestured to the hidden guards nearby. Everyone quickly regrouped and leaped up, heading for the air transportation spirit tools parked in midair. Arbor pulled the dazed Mo Bingyun and flew onto the first air transportation spirit tool with Duan Yu. It was not until the dozens of air transportation spirit tools were far away that the other villagers dared to gather at the beach. They all sighed for a long time before talking all at once. Who exactly is this little physician? Wow, look at her aura. She should be a noble daughter from some large patrician family, right? Madame Fong, eh. Some villagers called Madame Fong several times, but she ignored them and ran toward her house with the child in her arms. The villagers pursed their lips. Suddenly, someone shouted, that little physician left, so who will treat Brother Fong's injury? Brother Fong is still lying on the beach at the east side of the village, right? When they were fleeing for their lives earlier, none of them cared about Brother Fong, who was bitten by a sea shark and couldn't move his lower limbs. Now that the crisis was resolved, they remembered that Brother Fong was still lying on the beach. That's right, oh my, this old leg of mine, the little physician said it would be completely fine after 5 injections. But it's only been 3 injections. Who are we going to find for the other 2 injections? This little physician, seriously, Madame Fong didn't listen to the villagers' complaints. She carried Mau Mau and sprinted home, pushing open the door to her house with a bang. He ran into the small courtyard and took a look. The rice jar was filled with shining white rice, and there were a few strips of bacon and some vegetables beside it. She stood blankly in the courtyard with the child in her arms for a long time, her heart filled with regret. She had been with the little doctor for almost a month. How could she not know what kind of person she was? Just now, why did she hurt people like this? How could a young doctor harm innocent villagers like them? The dull-witted Mo initially sat next to Chow Mu. Afterwards, she stood up and circled around Chow Mu. All the secret guards who were above the god realm could see that this soul was walking around the little crown princess as if he had ADHD. He seemed to want to express something but couldn't find the words to express it. Chiao, Chiao. Mo's voice was slow and dragged out. It's not worth it. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what this half-soul was talking about. Arbor looked at her, blinked, and suddenly smiled at her. She suddenly understood what this blockhead wanted to say. Mo wanted to tell Arbor that those villagers weren't worth her trouble, and she didn't need to be in a bad mood. Although this fellow was blockhead, he wasn't an idiot. After being by Arbor's side for so long, Mo saw that the villagers only wanted to get some benefits from Jojo. Chapter 49-45. Because Jojo's medical skills were superb and she provided free treatment, the villagers naturally did their best to curry favor with her. They were even quite envious of Sister Feng's family for being able to pick up Jojo first. Mo wanted to tell Jojo that it wasn't worth it to sulk over these people. But she just couldn't express herself. After trying for a long time, she could only spit out 3 words with great difficulty. It was so strenuous that she was so anxious that she paced back and forth around Jojo. Arbor suddenly wanted to laugh and pulled the pacing Mo to sit down beside her. She said softly, "I'm not angry." She was indeed in a bad mood just now. After all, she had lived in the fishing village for close to a month. Sister Feng's fearful appearance earlier made her feel a little uncomfortable. But forget it. Not everyone in this world could like Jojo. There would always be people who liked her and people who hated her. This was a very normal phenomenon. It was fine as long as she got over it. She wasn't a morning glory that faced the sun and had to make everyone like her. There was no need for this and no need to be conflicted. The fishing village was equivalent to a small stop in her life journey. She wouldn't come back once she passed it. Jojo, freshly baked roasted sweet potatoes. It's very sweet. Come and try it. While she was pondering, she heard Duan Yu's voice. She looked up and saw this guy's moon-white clothes fluttering past her. He was holding a plate of roasted sweet potatoes with both hands and was smiling at her with curved eyes. Those rippling peach blossom eyes seemed to faintly flicker with the light of shattered stars. Eat. This was a huge headache. One had to look forward in life, so they naturally had to eat. Let's go take a look at the entrance to the sacrificial sea's abyss later. We have to dig 3 feet into the ground to dig those 2 idiots out. Okay. Arbor nibbled on the roasted sweet potato in her hand, a hint of sweetness in her mouth. She was different from her mother. She definitely wasn't destined to be alone. Even if their kinship was extremely thin, Jojo had a lover, a sept, and so many friends. There was nothing that Jojo couldn't face. Half a month ago, I followed your aura and found the wreckage of a ship. After that, I sent people to search the surface of the sea. They didn't find you, but they did find many people from various aristocratic families. Your Mu family is safe and sound. I've already sent people to send them back to Dragonflame City. Xiao Mu's fair fingers twitched as she recalled little fifth Qin, whose complexion was a bit pale. When he let her go, he said that he would take care of everything over there. Therefore the Mu clans Ting Yun Yunji, Murong Yen, and the others were also released by the Zither cultivator. Xiao Mu had mixed feelings, and she didn't know what to say. The Qin family is the mastermind behind the heavenly fate. Arbor looked up at Duan Yu with a listless expression. Jojo is too stupid and has been kept in the dark by them. Nonsense. Duan Yu peeled another sweet potato for her and fed it to the little stoic. They hid themselves so well that no one noticed. You're not the only one who was fooled. Everyone was dumbfounded. This was the true terror of these people from the Qin estate. Now that I've seen through their identities, do you think they'll still return to Dragonflame City? Duan Yu nodded. They naturally won't stay in the Qin estate in Dragonflame City anymore. They'll probably move to a secret location and continue hiding. They can gather a lot of information while hiding in Dragonflame City. Most likely, not all of them will withdraw. Arbor thought about it and agreed. Chapter 49-46. If she were the Qin estate's patriarch, she naturally wouldn't give up the connection she had painstakingly built up in the capital of the Divine Province for so many years. Alright, don't think too much. Go and sleep first, alright. Duan Yu felt a bit stifled as he looked at the little stoic's small face. She seemed to be thinner than a palm, and he felt even more stifled. When Prince Mo, that scoundrel, saw that his wife had lost so much weight, he might even shamelessly chase after him and beat him up. There was no reasoning with that guy. He wasn't someone who could reason with others. Arbor was indeed a bit sleepy. She had been on tenterhooks these past few days and couldn't eat or sleep well. Now that she saw Duan Yu, she relaxed a lot. After eating 2 fist-sized sweet potatoes, her body was warm and her stomach was full. She took out a sleeping bag from her inner world and Sir Jojo crawled inside. This spirit artifact cabin was quite spacious. Other than Wui and Xiaoyi, who were by Duan Yu's side, the other hidden guards were arranged to be on other flying spirit artifacts. After Jojo installed a sleeping bag on the spacious seat in the spirit artifact cabin, Duan Yu's lips curled. He raised his hand to set up a soundproof defensive wall near the seat to prevent her from rolling down from her seat with the sleeping bag. Moe swayed back and forth outside the defensive wall. He looked up at Duan Yu before swaying to a seat and sitting down. He obediently and expressionlessly continued to stare blankly. Duan Yu looked back at Jojo, who had burrowed into the sleeping bag, and thought, Jojo, I wish you a good night's sleep. Don't worry about anything because I'm here. Ming Province's Great Yong City, Eastern Palace, Crown Prince Estate. Ming Yasi coldly gazed at the people before him. His gaze landed on a graceful woman with a white veil covering her face. Your Honorable Highness the Crown Prince of Ming Province. The leader, a middle-aged man, placed a hand across his chest and bowed to Ming Yasi. It would be better for you to personally inspect this precious gift. Ming Yasi coldly stared at them and ordered coldly, Woman, remove the veil on your face and let me see who exactly you are. These uninvited guests from the grassland had tried every possible means to see him, saying that they wanted to present him with a treasure. Was it this woman in front of him who smelled like a prostitute? A trace of disgust flashed through Ming Yasi's eyes. Did he look like such a stupid person? Would he casually accept a woman of unknown origin? At this thought, the woman in the white veil gracefully reached out and took off her veil, revealing an exquisite face the size of a palm. She smiled at the dumbfounded Ming Yasi with her big, watery eyes. She bowed and said, "Greetings, Your Highness." Dark Yas glared at the familiar face in front of him, his eyes revealing traces of ferocity. What a beauty who substituted the plum for the peach. Do they think that anything in this world can be replaced? What a joke. He finally understood what was going on. The cold light in his eyes turned into a substantial killing intent. You've looked for the Emperor of Tsang Prefecture before, right? No wonder Duan Yu, that guy, seemed to have gone mad recently and dispatched an extremely powerful army to the Pingjin Prairie to hunt down the people of the state of Luo. So that's how it was. When the leader of the envoy from the state of Luo saw Ming Yasi's reaction, his heart sank. It couldn't be, right? Could it be that this Ming Prefecture's crown prince was as eccentric as the Tsang Prefecture's emperor? That couldn't be, right? Chapter 49-47. It's hard for you to cover such an ugly fake face with a veil. Ming Yas's cold words caused the woman's expression to stiffen. What? Ever since she was perfectly transformed by the transformation potion, although she couldn't compare to the other candidates, she, Lily, number 5, could already be considered a mid-tier product. It was definitely not something that Lily, or number 9 and 8 could compare to. Every day when she looked in the mirror, she would be mesmerized by her own face. It was simply too perfect, okay? His Highness the Underworld Crown Prince must be blind. Yes, if he wasn't blind, how could he not see how good she was? That man's cold gaze looked through her face as if he was looking at an ancient place. This kind of gaze that disregarded her made Lily, or number 5, feel suffocated and embarrassed. The woman held the white veil in her hand and twisted it tightly. The stifling feeling in her chest was about to make her explode. You really shouldn't have taken off the veil to scare people. Hurry up and put it back. Student Ollie, who was standing behind his elder brother, felt like he was struck by lightning. Sometimes, Big Brother's words were really too hurtful. Cough cough. Lily, her number 5, clutched her chest that was about to explode and panted heavily. She nervously tilted her head and glared at Ming Yas in front of her with hatred and anger. You back down. The head envoy of Doruo coldly reprimanded. The woman trembled and didn't dare to act rashly. She hurriedly took a few steps back, but her eyes were still filled with resentment and anger. She glared at the expressionless Ming Yas who was sitting on the high seat. This arrogant underworld crown prince made her feel a strong sense of defeat, which made her feel very uncomfortable. Your Highness the Underworld Crown Prince. The head envoy placed his hand across his chest and respectfully bowed to Ming Yas. Our country of Daluo has come here with great sincerity to propose cooperation with you. Doruo is willing to help Your Highness the Crown Prince become the true overlord of the upper 3 provinces. Ming Yas couldn't help but sneer when he heard this. How dare a small grassland country talk big and shamelessly point out the world? A faint trace of anger flashed across the face of the head envoy from the country of Doruo. But he quickly suppressed it, took a deep breath, and said in a deep voice, You have to believe me. The key lies in the Crown Princess of the Divine Land. The Crown Prince of the Divine Land is absurd and incompetent. He is a complete slave to his wife, don't you think so? The corners of Ming Yasi's mouth twitched as he felt an inexplicable urge to burst into laughter. Fuck, he was in the underworld province, and the rumors he heard about the Crown Prince of the Divine Land were often such as, the city wall turned into ashes as he talked and laughed, he was as calm and unruffled as the wind and moon, he was extraordinarily heroic and handsome, and so on. He had really never heard of anyone who would use the words incompetent on this guy. As long as we control the Crown Princess of the Divine Land, it will be the same as controlling the Crown Prince of the Divine Land. Ming Yasi raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, Mo Lien loves his wife like his life and protects her like food. That's true. We'll swap Lily and the little Crown Princess of the Divine Land for the real Crown Princess by your side. Ming Yasi silently looked at the head envoy who was spouting nonsense in front of him. The head envoy became more and more enthusiastic as he spoke. He even took a step forward, intending to get closer to him. Chapter 49-48. This way, not only will you get what you want, we can also control the lifeline of the Divine Land's Crown Prince. From there, we can firmly control the future of the Divine Land. Ha 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 ha. This person seemed to have seen a bright future, as if he had already unified the 3 continents. He put his hands on his hips and laughed loudly at Ming Yas. Ming Yas waved his hand expressionlessly. Drag them out and kill them. The head envoy looked at Ming Yas, who sat motionless on the throne and did not even raise his eyebrows. What? Could it be that he had misheard? This crown prince said, drag them out and kill them all, Ming Yas ordered indifferently. The head envoy took a step back. Lily, number 5, who was standing behind him, opened her mouth wide. She was so shocked that an egg could be stuffed into her mouth. This underworld crown prince actually gave the order to kill them so casually. What did he take them for? Were they livestock that could be killed wantonly? Damn it! Lily, number 5, clenched her teeth and twisted the white veil in her hand. She screamed sharply, 3 state advisors, what are we waiting for? Kill them all. Kill them all. This underworld crown prince who doesn't know what's good for him should pay the price in blood and go to hell. Without waiting for the head envoy's order, Lily, number 5, impatiently took out a pair of sharp triangular awls from her waist. She screamed angrily and rushed toward Ming Yas on the throne. Ollie waved his hand and dozens of secret guards jumped down from the hole. They quickly surrounded and attacked the group of Doruo ambassadors. In the blink of an eye, Lily, number 5, had already rushed in front of Dark Yas with a pair of triangular awls in her hands. Without any explanation, she pushed the sharp awls in her hands towards his chest. Ming Yasi snorted coldly and sneered. Woman who overestimates herself. He shot out his hand like lightning and grabbed his opponent's wrist. Lily, number 5, felt her wrist being pinched by a pair of pliers. The pain was unbearable. However, she only gritted her teeth and tried to twist her wrist but to no avail. She stabbed the triangular awl in her other hand at the back of Ming Yas's hand. You can't even withstand a single blow. With a backhand, Yas slapped the woman's face. After Lily, number 5's tender and fair face took a heavy blow, a faint crack sound could be heard. It was the sound of something cracking. This subtle sound stimulated her heart to thump heavily, and she let out an incomparably sharp cry. Lily hurriedly waved her arm and erected a water spirit defense wall around her body. She then took out a mirror from her sleeve in a panic. Seeing this, he almost fainted from anger. At this moment, Mayas stood up and walked down the long steps. His gaze coldly landed on Lily, number 5's face, and he couldn't help but sneer. Look at that fake face of yours. It's cracked now. Looking at you like this is truly disgusting. When had the little stoic ever revealed such a charming expression? Number 101's stoic face hadn't changed at all from beginning to end. When she occasionally cracked open her small mouth and smiled, it was as if red rain was about to fall from the sky. Since you don't want your face, someone, peel off the skin of her face for this prince and give it to that whimsical king of Doruo. Let him take it back and admire it for himself. Ha ha ha. Ming Yas spread his legs and stood ramrod straight as he sneered. Chapter 49-49. No, no. No. Lily, number 5 widened her eyes in horror when she was suddenly startled by a bestial roar. She felt a sudden pain in her chest. When she raised her head to look, she was actually being stepped on by a vigorous calf. That pair of calf eyes flickered with a cold light as they stared fixedly at her, scaring Lily, number 5, into shrieking uncontrollably. Her entire body trembled as she tried to turn around. State Preceptor, State Preceptor, State Preceptor Shintu, save me, save. At this moment, a shadow guard holding a thin lancet expressionlessly walked to her side. Lily, number 5, felt a trace of fear that she had never felt before. Her entire body trembled violently as she begged in panic, Your Highness, I was wrong, I know I was wrong. Your Highness, please spare me, spare my life. Stiesai sneered, What use do I have for your life? Lily, number 5, widened her eyes in horror. Her hands tightly covered her cheeks as she screamed, No, you can't take away my face, you can't. Hee. Stiesai's sneer interrupted the woman's screams, You think you're worthy of looking like the crown princess? You lowly woman, you shameless thing. You're only worthy of hiding in a dark ditch, forever being a dirty and ugly smelly rat. 15 minutes later, Lily, number 5, was thrown to the ground. Her hands were stained with blood as she trembled and covered her face. Her body was curled up in pain as she gasped for breath. You son of a bitch, ah. Her curses were stopped abruptly by the shadow guard's whip on her back. Your Highness, that head envoy fled in a panic with injuries. The rest were killed on the spot. Oh. Stiesai smiled as he glanced at Lily, number 5, who was curled up on the ground. Looks like he's not weak. Stiesai's smile disappeared as he coldly ordered, Close all the city gates and arrest this person. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. Yes. Your Highness. Arbor crawled out of the sleeping bag with a head full of disheveled hair. He looked at the smooth blue sky above his head and was momentarily at a loss. She flipped over and sat up. Only then did she remember that she was currently in a spirit artifact cabin in the Tsang province. They had already left the barren fishing village, which was short of supplies. Why didn't you sleep a bit longer? We haven't arrived yet. Duan Yu slowly walked over and smiled at her. I slept for a long time. It wasn't that long. Duan Yu walked to her side. Only a little over 2 hours. Oh. Arbor felt that he was in good spirits. Although he didn't sleep for a long time, it was still a good sleep. He didn't have any of those messy dreams. We should be able to reach the entrance of the sacrificial sea by 10:00 in the evening. Jojo, I'll bring some people down to take a look. You stay up here. Arbor reached out and touched his belly. He thought for a few seconds and nodded obediently. Okay. Duan Yu smiled. Oh right, you're divine conscious. At the mention of this, Arbor became a bit angry. She pursed her lips and said, I take soul-soothing pills every few days. I still have to wait for my divine conscious to fully recover before I can open the star domain. I estimated that there's still about 6 to 7 days. Duan Yu nodded. Don't worry, take it slow. Chapter 49-50. Arbor thought that this was the only way. It wasn't a matter of a day or two that her soul was unstable. Previously, in the Pond Lotus Sacred Realm, she had already stabilized her soul by withdrawing a fragment of her soul. If it weren't for the help of that soul fragment, it would probably take even longer to recover. Arbor reflexively stroked her left palm. Sometimes, she seemed to be able to feel the Fushi greatsword in her body impatiently wanting to jump out. Soon, old friend, I'll be able to properly meet you very soon. Your Majesty. A hidden guard hastily walked into the spirit tool cabin and stood at the door, bowing respectfully. Jojo, dinner has already been prepared for you. Go eat first. I'll go see what's going on. Arbor glanced at him and nodded as she climbed out of the sleeping bag. You have to tell me if there's anything. People like them always like to hide everything from Jojo, which was especially annoying. Okay. Duan-yu nodded with a smile and turned to leave with the muttering hidden guard. Sir Jojo rolled out of the sleeping bag with a grumble. His eyes suddenly brightened as he rubbed his slightly warmed stomach. It was very strange. She could almost grasp the baby's rhythm now. When it was mealtime, he would definitely remind her to eat. 3 meals a day plus 2 snacks were enough. When it was time, her stomach would heat up slightly. This was the master inside reminding her to eat quickly. This child was definitely a foodie, the little stoic inwardly thought expressionlessly. He was definitely like his dad. There were 6 dishes and 1 soup for dinner. The little stoic ate quite well. Moe sat on a stool on the side and dazedly watched her eat. After the little stoic finished eating, she put down her chopsticks and felt her stomach heat up slightly. Mother can't eat anymore. It's not good for indigestion, she muttered to herself and rubbed her stomach. When she looked up, she saw Duan-yu walking in with a plate of delicious roasted fish. Jojo, this colorful divine fish, Xiaomu stood up abruptly and jogged to his side with her little legs, considerately taking the plate from his hands. Strange, my stomach seems to be craving this colorful divine fish even though I can't eat anymore. What's wrong, Jojo? Nothing. Arbor picked up the chopsticks and tried to pick up the ordinary braised fish with soy sauce at the side. His stomach was still, and there was no reaction at all. She turned to pick up the colorful divine fish, and her stomach instantly warmed up. It was as if baby Mo was urging her to hurry through her stomach. Arbor tried a few more dishes thoughtfully before he put down his chopsticks in realization. Her child seemed to be more interested in food that contained divine power. Whenever her chopsticks touched food that contained divine or spiritual power, her stomach would heat up to varying degrees. Was this a signal from Wa? Jojo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had the urge to roll his eyes. This child hasn't even been born yet. How old is he? He's already taking care of his mother's daily needs. However, she ate too much ordinary food today and didn't want to eat food that contained divine power anymore. Forget it, she'll try again tomorrow. Duan-yu sat next to her and watched her move her chopsticks from east to west. His gaze followed her back and forth. Not eating anymore. I'm stuffed. Then get up and walk. I'll help you digest. Duan-yu's gaze shifted to her stomach and he asked softly, does he know? He doesn't. Arbor was dejected. What a pig head. Chapter 49-51. Don't worry, the next time we meet, I'll beat him up on Jojo's behalf. Jojo should be beaten to death for making Jojo worry about him for so long. Arbor sniffed. Last time in the Mystic Realm, I finally managed to use the projection of ancient Emolien's soul to speak to him. But later on I don't know what happened, but the image was abruptly cut off. Jojo didn't even have time to tell her husband about baby Mo. Duan-yu looked down at Sir Jojo. What a pig head, so stupid. It's fine, I'll beat him to death for you later to vent your anger. Arbor glanced at him and thought, you're the one who came up with an excuse to beat him up, right? Just now, why did that person come to find you? It's nothing major, I can resolve it easily. Duan casually brushed it off with a smile. As if I'd believe you. Arbor glared at him and grumpily harumphed. This person had the same personality as Jojo's Lotus. He would usually sneak around and pretend to be calm in front of her. No matter how big the issue was, it would become a trivial matter in their mouths. Duan smiled innocently at her and walked several rounds around the spirit artifact cabin with her. Jojo, have you gained weight? You're the one who's gained weight. Duan reflexively pinched his chin. Compared to when we first met, I have gained quite a bit of weight. That's right. When I first saw you, you looked like a monkey. Not only was he ugly, but he also had a wicked heart. He kept trying to trick Jojo, so he deserved to be beaten up by Jojo. Duan, he was such an exquisite and handsome man in the capital, but there wasn't anything good coming out of this little fellow's mouth. You still dare to say that back then, you even broke my bones. Ha! Who told you to trick Jojo? Was Sir Jojo so easy to trick? Duan pursed his lips, and his footsteps paused as he looked at Xiaoyi, who was walking towards him. Go do your thing. Arbor knew that she must have something to do, but he didn't want to tell her and make her upset. All right, if you're tired, you can sleep a little longer. Arbor nodded. She was in good spirits now. She planned to take out the crystal core of the sacred beast ichthyosaur and study it. If only he could get in touch with his friends in the star field. He could let the three little puppies see if the crystal core of the sacred beast ichthyosaur was effective on them. After Duan hurriedly left with Xiaoyi, Arbor strolled around the spirit artifact cabin a few times before sitting down to rest. With a flip of his hand, he took out the ichthyosaur crystal core from his storage talisman and squinted his eyes at the light. This crystal core was filled with boundless saint energy. Just by looking at it with the naked eye, one would feel that the saint energy within it was like a raging wave. He wondered if the three little puppies, with their small bodies, could withstand the saint power. After studying it for a while, Arbor put it away again. Seeing that the sky outside was gradually turning dark, Sir Jojo didn't feel sleepy at all, so she simply closed her eyes and regulated her breathing for a while. When she opened her eyes again, she discovered that the air transportation spirit artifact had already stopped in midair. She stood up and called for a hidden guard to inquire. It was only then that she found out that they had already arrived at the entrance to the abyss of the sacrificial sea an hour ago. Duan had already led some people down by now. Sir Jojo knitted her brows in displeasure when this person didn't call for her even after arriving. That hidden guard lowered his head and said, His Majesty, please wait inside the cabin for a while. There's no need to go down. Arbor was silent for a moment as she paced back and forth inside the spirit artifact cabin. Chapter 49-52. She kept feeling uneasy and uneasy. I'll go take a look. She walked to the spirit artifact cabin door and said to the hidden guard, Take a look at the situation. I'll come back immediately. But His Majesty instructed, I'm just going to take a look at the surface of the sea. I won't go to the cave entrance. Even now, she still had some psychological trauma from that bottomless pit in the sacrificial sea abyss. When she recalled how she fumbled about in the darkness, unable to see her fingers in front of her, she felt a bit uncomfortable. Staying in that kind of place for too long would really drive one crazy. The hidden guard couldn't persuade the little stoic, but he also didn't dare to offend her, so he could only meekly open the spirit artifact cabin door and accompany her down. The surface of the sea was illuminated quite brightly by the illumination pearls. Xiaoyi was currently hovering near the entrance to the sacrificial sea abyss with a group of hidden guards. When he looked up and saw a young hidden guard leading the little stoic down, he couldn't help but frown and glare fiercely at that young hidden guard. What's going on? Sir Showy, this subordinate couldn't dissuade Mississippi. Showy hovered above the sea and took a step forward in Arbor's direction. He bowed and said, Miss, it's not appropriate for you to go down with your health condition. Arbor nodded expressionlessly at him. Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you. I promised Duanyu that I wouldn't go down, so I won't go back on my word. Showy sighed in relief and nodded with a smile. All right then. You still need to be careful at the cave entrance. Arbor had actually paced back and forth near the sacrificial sea abyss countless times. In the past, when she was alone, she would swim here from the small fishing village every night and sit at the cave entrance pitifully waiting for Jojo's lotus. Everyone always said she was a person with great fortune. In the end, she waited for a full month and didn't see her husband. What good fortune? She had nothing. Sir Jojo took out a furry cloak from his inner world and wrapped himself in it before summoning an eggshell defensive barrier to encircle himself. Showy's mouth twitched. He then saw the little girl roll around like a small round egg until she reached the entrance to the sacrificial sea abyss and sat there motionlessly with her chin propped up. The little stoic's movements were especially adept. It probably wasn't her first time activating her eggshell defensive barrier and sitting at the cave entrance, anxiously waiting. Xiao Yi originally wanted to persuade her to return to the spirit artifact cabin, but she swallowed the words that were on the tip of her tongue. This kind of silent waiting should be very understandable. Although she didn't say a word of worry, in reality the little stoic's heart was extremely anxious and restless. In the latter half of the night, it started to drizzle. Xiao Yi couldn't help but step forward to persuade him. Arbor was getting more and more worried. Why didn't you come back after so long? Don't worry, nothing will happen. Look at the rain, it seems to be getting heavier. Xiao Yi advised softly, Miss, you should return to the spirit artifact cabin first. Qiao Mu turned around to look at that pitch-black pit, feeling her heart sink. Suddenly, a luminous pearl was thrown up from the entrance of the cave. It quickly leaped into the air, making the surrounding luminous pearls even brighter. Arbor's eyes brightened, and she quickly looked down. Duanyu led a group of people and swiftly leaped to the surface of the sea. He couldn't help but be taken aback when he saw Arbor wrapped in an eggshell. It's so late. Why aren't you resting? Duanyu irritably flicked her outer eggshell. Didn't you promise me to obediently stay in the spirit artifact cabin and not come down? Chapter 49-53. Sir Jojo glanced at him guiltily and murmured, worried. Duanyu's heart softened, and he gazed at her gently. He patted her head through the defensive barrier. What's there to worry about? You're truly a little fool. Hurry, let's go. The rain is getting heavier. Let's talk inside the cabin. Arbor couldn't resist pursing her lips. He made it sound like the heavy rain would affect him. In reality, when those raindrops and mist were a few feet away from him, they were evaporated by his sacred power. Not a single drop could touch him. Arbor gazed at Duanyu, who was happily eating a bowl of noodles, with an indescribable gaze. Jojo, your 100 treasures food box is really congee, rice noodles, and all kinds of food. When he came up earlier, he grumbled, I'm hungry. It would be great if there was a bowl of piping hot noodles right now. In the end, the little girl expressionlessly took out a food box and immediately placed a bowl of mushroom, vegetable, and shredded pork noodles for him for the rest of the day. Mother will not eat anything else. The little stoic raised her hand to rub her stomach, dispersing the restless heat from the child in her belly. She didn't want to eat until she was full and then digest. From her doctor's point of view, she had indeed eaten a bit too much today. You can speak now. When the little stoic saw him put down his bowl and chopsticks, she immediately pressed him with a serious expression. "What's the situation inside the abyss of the sacrificial sea?" "The entrance is completely blocked. From the looks of it, there should have been a fierce battle inside. If we want to dig open the entrance, it will take at least half a month to do it bit by bit with manpower. We need to use a spiritual energy bead to blast it open. That could be even worse." Duan Yu sternly said to her, "The path below is completely sealed off by the glacier. The layer of ice is very thick. If we use a spiritual energy bead to blast it open, I'm afraid the cave entrance won't be preserved. At that time, the entire entrance to the sacrificial sea abyss will collapse, and it will be even more troublesome." Arbor thought about it and agreed. After a moment of silence, he said, "Then tell me, what should we do?" "Dig." Since they couldn't use external forces to open the passage, they could only use manpower to dig. "Therefore, we may have to spend some time here." "But your body, I'm fine." Arbor quickly straightened his back. "You don't have to worry about me. I'm fine." After a few days, when his divine sense was restored, there should be no problem. Duan Yu glanced at her. "All right then. If you feel any discomfort, you must tell me as soon as possible." "Okay." Arbor nodded. For the next 5 to 6 days, Duan Yu led Xiaoyi and the others to dive into the abyss of the sacrificial sea every day to excavate the passage entrance. Arbor spent most of his time sitting in the eggshell defensive shield, anxiously looking at the bottomless pit. When they came up, he would sit there for most of the day. On this day, Arbor sat at the entrance of the cave as usual, staring blankly at the bottomless pit. Suddenly, she heard a familiar and excited voice. "Master Silver, Master Silver, Master Silver." Arbor instantly perked up. At first, she thought she was hearing things. Soon after, she saw the little tree ant and the little water droplet abruptly jump out of the star domain and onto her head, one on the left and one on the right. "Master Silver, what happened? You worried us to death." That's right, that's right. What happened to your conscience?" Chapter 49-54. Arbor was also very excited. "Previously, I used the Fushi Greatsword twice in a row, causing my soul to become unstable and my consciousness to be damaged. The star domain automatically became silent and sealed. I've made you guys worry. I was really worried to death." The little tree ant smacked its lips. "When I think of Master fighting so many bad people outside alone, my heart almost hurts to death." Seeing this, the little water child punched the Trent's head. "I see you eating and sleeping every day, but I don't see you being that worried about Master." The little tree ant flailed its arms and legs and said angrily, "What do you know? You usually see me as calm on the surface, but my heart is already fluctuating." Arbor, these two little things, as soon as they came out, they started fighting like dogs. It really made one feel very helpless. "Master, the little monkey is trying to come out," the little tree ant suddenly said. Arbor was slightly startled, then quickly nodded. "Hurry and let her out." The little monkey must have sensed Mo's aura. When Xiao Mu turned around to look, she saw Emily sitting beside her in a daze with her head lowered. She was racking her brains over something. "Big sister." The little monkey was released, and quickly pounced on Mo, who was sitting beside Arbor. With this pounce, half of her body pounced out from Mo's transparent figure. Arbor raised her hand to her forehead and quickly pulled this impetuous girl back. After a period of treatment, the little monkey's fur on her body and face had already faded by 70 to 80%, and she gradually transformed into a delicate and pretty little girl. She looked at Mo excitedly, then glanced at Arbor. "Little big sister, my big sister, she's back, right?" This is a fragment of Mo's soul that I found in the Pond Lotus sacred realm. It shouldn't be complete. Arbor nodded and said, but I can be sure that Mo definitely didn't disappear from this world. She can definitely recover. The little monkey's eyes immediately turned red. She nodded and choked with sobs as she said, yes, that's great. Yes, that's great. Arbor thought, that lonely soul that drifted in the void for 3,000 years finally preserved a part of her soul. As long as he slowly recovered, he would be able to get better. Big sister, big sister. The little monkey circled around Mo. When it saw him raise his head and look at it blankly, it couldn't help but cry out anxiously. Little monkey. Arbor brought the little brat to his side and patted her head. Don't worry. Sister's soul is drifting around. She must be quite stupid right now. It's normal that I don't know you. After all, this half of her god's soul shouldn't have the memories of the host soul. Even if it does, it's just some memory fragments. Little sister, what should we do? We can only wait. Arbor sighed and patted the child's shoulder. In the future, if he could concoct some medicinal pills that could stabilize one's divine soul, they should be of help to Mo Chin. Wait, hearing this word, the little monkey's body trembled slightly. Young female benefactor, waiting is not in vain. You should be glad that there's someone in this world who's worth waiting for. The little monk had stepped out of the star field at some point in time. At this moment, he was holding a box with both hands and lecturing with a solemn expression. Stinky monk, you talk nonsense all day long. She was already several hundred years old, yet she had to lecture this chubby little monk every other day. It was infuriating. Young female benefactor, she hit this little monk's head. The little monk puffed up his chubby cheeks and shouted angrily. Wasn't it normal to get beaten up all day long? Chapter 49-55. Arbor lowered her head and glanced at the little monk. She lifted him to the side, giving the little monkey and Mo some space to interact. All right. The little monk who was always talking nonsense would get beaten up no matter where he went. Arbor carried him away. The little monkey and Mo definitely had a lot of things they wanted to talk about. The rest of the people shouldn't disturb them. Benefactress. The little monk puffed up his cheeks and tried to look up. He tilted his head and looked at her. You seem to have gained weight again. Benefactress really wants to beat you up right now. Arbor glared at the little monk. Shut up. You don't need to speak right now. The little monk smacked his lips and snorted. Then when will this little monk need to speak? The people in the star domain were all very strange. Every time the little monk opened his mouth, they would either tell him to shut up or find him naggy. Actually, he wasn't naggy at all. He just spoke a few more words. Arbor took out a carrot from her inner world and stuffed it into the little monk's mouth. Is it sweet? It's sweet. The little monk took the carrot and took a bite out of it. Kong Kong, have you made any progress in controlling the fire spirit recently? Kong Kong nodded. Yes. The small fireball has already become a large fireball. Arbor lowered her head and glanced at him. She was surprised. Kong Kong, your cultivation level has increased. Ba. This little monk hasn't worked hard enough. The little monk puffed up his cheeks and took a few bites of the carrot. This little rascal was only 5 years old, but his cultivation level had already surpassed most people. Looking at his small arms and legs, it was hard to imagine that he was already a level 13 spiritual master. His innate talent seemed to be even better than hers, if not better. Benefactress. The little fatty said in a childish voice. You haven't come to see this little monk for so long. This little monk misses you very much. Arbor wanted to laugh. She reached out and poked his white and tender double chin. Do you miss me or the peaches I gave you? The little monk thought for 3 seconds and nodded heavily. Both. He missed the peaches mainly. Liar. Arbor flicked him on the forehead. Liar. The little monk hurriedly covered his forehead with his hand. No, no, I'm not lying to you. All right. Arbor carried him to the door of the spirit artifact cabin. Sister is going to the surface of the sea now. Are you going to enter the star field or don't enter the star field, don't enter the star field? The little monk repeatedly protested. He had been cooped up in the star field all day long. If he wasn't cultivating, he would be eating melons. It wasn't easy for him to get some fresh air. He had to stay by the female benefactor's side. Benefactress, this little monk has recently recited a new scripture to calm the mind. Do you want to hear it? Arbor looked at him silently. Not for now. That's really a pity. The small monk curled his lips and said, this little monk has already memorized it thoroughly. I can even recite it backwards. Originally, I thought that since Benefactress has a strong evil aura, I could read it to Benefactress when I have nothing to do. Arbor, thank you to your whole family. Since Benefactress Oh. Arbor pressed the little monk's nagging mouth with one hand and quickly jumped down from the spirit artifact cabin with him. Her ears suddenly became much quieter, and Arbor let out a slight sigh of relief. Little tree, bring Kong Kong back to the star field. The little monk hugged her arm. Oh, little tree waved its branches, and its voice rippled. Forget it, mistress. Chapter 49-56. When you weren't here, Kong Kong talked about you every day. I missed you so much. Most importantly, it was very annoying to talk about it all day long. Now that the star field finally had some peace, it was better to let Master Silver worry about it alone. Master Silver, if there's nothing else, we'll go back first. While you were away, many people went into seclusion. Who are you looking for? I'll call them for you. Arbor was expressionless. I'm looking for Xiao Xiao. I'll find her myself later. She had been on the sea for so long. Where on earth did little Taisui go? He was nowhere to be seen in the mystic realm or in the forgetting river. Could it be he went back to the imperial capital alone? Now that the star field was open, the poison-tailed butterfly queen could send out a large number of little butterflies to search for him. Arbor was a bit worried. Little Taisui had been missing for long enough. He was a child a child who looked no more than 10 years old. It was very worrying to see him drifting on the sea alone for so long. Master Silver, do you have any other instructions? Bring out those 3 little puppies for me. Little Tree said expressionlessly, I can't. Master Silver, go catch them yourself. Those 3 idiots had now openly settled down on the main planet. How infuriating. Master Silver wasn't here, but they could run to the main planet on their own. Even Little Tree Cho-Cho didn't have such an honor. It couldn't even enter the main planet. Just thinking about it was infuriating. Master Silver, this time, you have to give me permission to let Cho-Cho go to the main planet too. Cho-Cho was despised by those 3 silly puppies. Arbor nodded. Got it. After Little Tree left with Dian, Arbor first communicated with the poison-tailed butterfly queen Xiao Xiao with his divine sense. Xiao Xiao immediately patted her chest and promised that she would bring the little butterflies back to find little Taisui. She hadn't come out for a long time. Leading tens of thousands of butterflies, she flew out of the star field and scattered on the sea. Xiao Mu looked at their thin and small bodies and was quite worried for them. The sea wind was so strong. He didn't know if he could find little Ticeway. He hoped that they were all safe. Benefactress, this little monk is not full yet. Arbor subconsciously took out a carrot and stuffed it into the little monk's mouth. Crunch. The small monk bit down, producing a crisp sound. Why don't I see Benefactress's husband? It was rare for that big bad guy to not appear by Benefactress's side for such a long time. If he was here, he would definitely not allow the Benefactress to hug him. Humph. He would definitely take the little monk with one hand and swing him back and forth like he was a bag of oranges. He's at the bottom of the cave. Fell in. The little monk cried out in his childish voice. With a face full of disbelief, he said, I didn't expect him to be so stupid. You're already so old, yet you don't even look where you're going. Arbor's mouth twitched. He suddenly felt like he didn't know what to say. Will he climb up? Wow, it's a little dark down there. I can't see what's down there. The little monk said again and looked into the bottomless abyss. Arbor sighed. It's been a long time. The little monk followed suit and sighed. He raised his hand and patted Arbor's back. Benefactress, don't worry. Although he's stupid, his luck is pretty good. He'll definitely climb up by himself, someone's coming up. Benefactress. The little monk suddenly stretched out his chubby hand and pointed at the bottomless abyss. A beam of light suddenly leaped out of the cave. Following that, a shadow guard jumped up and shouted, Quick, help lift him up. Chapter 49-57. Arbor hastily stepped forward with the little monk in her arms. What is it? Jojo. Duanyu leaped up and landed in front of her. He stared at the little monk and exclaimed, This imp came out. The little monk chewed on a carrot and asked in a childish voice, Benefactress's Duanyu, you also fell into the hole. Duanyu's mouth twitched as he looked at him, both amused and exasperated. He then turned to look at Arbor. Jojo, has your star domain recovered? Arbor nodded repeatedly. Duanyu, before she could finish speaking, her gaze suddenly landed behind him, and she exclaimed, Shao. Little Ticeway. Little Ticeway's eyes were tightly shut, and his small face was ghastly pale as he was gently carried out of the hole by two hidden guards. Arbor quickly stuffed the little monk in her hands into Duanyu's hands before floating forward. She took out a needle pouch from her sleeve and pricked little Ticeway twice. When the frost entered his body, his blood was about to solidify. Arbor's expression instantly turned extremely grave. It was truly strange that little Ticeway would be frozen to this extent by the frost that entered his body despite being at the transcendent divine realm. Duanyu quietly said, When I cut open the ice, I saw him fall into a hole in the ice. From the looks of it, it should have been quite a while. Arbor clenched her fists as she mused, could it be that this guy searched for her on the sea and mistakenly thought that she jumped into the abyss to find Emolien? So he also jumped into the abyss of the sacrificial sea to find her. So the two of them didn't meet near the Pond Lotus sacred realm at all. You mean to say that this layer of ice only broke recently? At least, it was only after little Ticeway jumped down to find her that the ice layer completely collapsed and blocked the passage. Duanyu nodded. Yes. In reality, he deeply suspected that the reason this abyss collapsed was probably related to Emolien's wanton destruction inside. However, to prevent Jojo from overthinking things, he didn't mention this in front of Jojo. I need to use a strong medicinal pill to expel the frost inside his body, Arbor said seriously. It will probably take half a day. Duanyu hummed in response before turning to Shao Yi and ordering, Send them to the flying spirit artifact. Yes. Benefactresses Duanyu, don't lift this young monk. the little monk protested in a timely manner. Everyone quickly leaped onto their air transportation spirit tools, and Arbor instructed his subordinates to lay down the little Tai Sui before administering acupuncture treatments. Little Monkey and Mo, who had just finished catching up with each other, ran over. Although it was called reminiscing, it was actually just Little Monkey rambling on by himself. Mose listened in a daze. Even after listening for a long time, he still wasn't able to give Little Monkey a response. But even so, the little monkey was already very happy. After all, his sister was now standing in front of him, alive. Although it was only a half-soul body, it was still better than nothing. Mo saw Arbor performing acupuncture and circled around Arbor as usual to watch. Arbor only took half an incense stick to burn from the acupuncture to the pill. After feeding it the strong medicinal pill, Arbor touched little Tai Sui's icy forehead and muttered to himself, "There's finally some warmth." He just needed to wait for little Tai Sui to slowly wake up. At that time, he could ask him about the situation. Arbor was filled with anticipation as he sat down next to the unconscious little Tai Sui. When Mose saw this, she also obediently sat down next to Arbor. Little Monkey then sat down next to Mose, sitting close to her. After Duanyu finished speaking with the hidden guard, he turned around and saw 3 heads of different sizes sitting in a row. Duanyu couldn't help laughing on the inside. Chapter 49-58. Duanyu's lips involuntarily curled into a faint smile. "Jojo, how is little Tai Sui? He's about to wake up. Looking at this progress, we should be able to open up the underground passage in 2 days. Jojo, don't be anxious." Arbor looked up at Duanyu, his eyes brightening. Mo and the little monkey also raised their heads one after another, their expressions identical as they looked at Duanyu. Duanyu was speechless. These two's movements were simply in sync with Jojo's. It was a bit comical for the 3 little fellows to stick together in a row. However, it was rare for Jojo to find someone he could chat with so well. Of course, most of the time, Jojo and Mo were together in silence, so they basically didn't speak much. However, the atmosphere between the 2 of them was quite harmonious. Jojo was finally a child with friends. Back then, she had said, "I don't have any friends," for a long time. When he thought of this, the smile on Duanyu's face deepened. Arbor glanced at him and was about to poke him when he noticed little Tai Sui's finger twitching. Arbor quickly propped up his head and placed a soft pillow under his head. Little Tai Sui slowly opened his large, beautiful eyes and stared blankly at Arbor, his gaze drifting erratically. Arbor quickly waved his hand in front of him and asked seriously, "How many fingers is this?" Little Tai Sui grumpily grabbed her small hand and exclaimed weakly, "Where did you run off to?" Arbor instantly felt guilty. "Little Tai Sui, didn't we agree to meet at the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm? Why did you run off to the undersea abyss?" At the mention of this, little Tai Sui flared up. "When did we agree to meet? I mentioned the Pool Lotus Sacred Realm back then, but you didn't say you would definitely go. I kept looking for you on the sea, but I couldn't find you at first, so I went to the undersea abyss entrance to wait for you. I thought that with your personality, you would definitely go to the undersea abyss entrance to wait for Lien every day. Who knew you wouldn't follow the routine?" At this point, little Tai Sui couldn't help but roll its eyes. "I thought to myself, could it be that you jumped into the abyss on a whim?" "Arbor," Duanyu interjected in amusement, "so you dug your own grave and jumped down to find Jojo? What are you thinking? Is Jojo that stupid?" Jojo nodded and stared at the little Tai Sui in disbelief. This child was so stupid. Little Tai Sui was so humiliated that he flew into a rage. He coughed, struggled to get up, and immediately changed the subject. "Do you know? I encountered the super sacred beast, Primal Chaos. This guy, when he talked about the things he had done, he immediately skipped the topic. When I saw this super holy beast, it was rolling back and forth in the depths of the ocean as if it was constipated. It stomped its legs and roared, crushing the entire country below it into pieces. I didn't even have time to see what happened before he spat out a mouthful of cold air. Actually, I could still move at that time, but unfortunately, that icy mist was extremely tyrannical and froze me to death in a matter of minutes. Primal Chaos. Duan Yu's expression instantly turned grave. In the undersea abyss. Yes. There's a natural formation in the depths of the undersea abyss. Little Taisui took a deep breath and said, when I rushed there, I didn't see a single person. It was just that super holy beast that spat ice water all over my face. When I fled upwards in a panic, I was struck by its tail, and I lost consciousness at that time. Chapter 49-59. I didn't see you until I woke up just now. During this time, the thing that left the deepest impression on little Taisui was that six-legged, four-winged chaos ferocious beast that was as red as fire. Six-legged, four-winged, and as red as fire. Its entire body was enveloped in a layer of blazing light. But did you know? This chaos ferocious beast doesn't spit fire when it opens its mouth. Instead, it spat out a large mouthful of ice mist that froze him stiff. If he hadn't cleverly mobilized all the sacred energy in his body to swiftly thaw and stagger away from the scene, he would have probably been smashed into minced meat by the chaos ferocious beast. Even though he escaped quickly, he was still sent flying by the chaos ferocious beast's tail and fell into the ice cavern. He was mostly lucky to be able to preserve his life on this trip. After being sent flying by the chaos ferocious beast's tail, he fell into that ice cavern. Thankfully, the chaos ferocious beast didn't chase after him, which saved his life. Of course, little Taisui himself was a bit baffled. Judging from the chaos ferocious beast's appearance at that time, it had clearly gone berserk, so why didn't it chase after him to kill him? Upon hearing little Taisui's words, Arbor's heart instantly clenched. Chaos ferocious beast. Could it be that the thing that suddenly interrupted the water ripple illusion was this ferocious beast's doing? Jojo's lotus and rotten peach blossom wouldn't be in any danger, right? Don't let your imagination run wild, Jojo. Duan Yu hastily interrupted her drifting thoughts and turned her small head back with one hand. He looked at this little stoic whose eyes were drifting erratically. It was obvious that her thoughts were a bit chaotic. The more she thought about this and that, the more she thought about it, the more scared she became. It'll be fine. How could a little reptile pose a threat to Mo Lien's rotten peach blossom? Little Taisui secretly rolled his eyes on the side. Little reptile, why don't you freaking find a little reptile the size of a mountain for me to see? Be good and rest first. I promise you, we'll definitely be able to smoothly enter the undersea abyss by tomorrow night at the latest. We'll explore it then. Little Taisui pursed his lips again, thinking, what's there to see in the undersea abyss when all that's left are ruins? But when she received Duan Yu's warning gaze, she could only shut her mouth. That night, Arbor didn't enter the star domain to rest. Instead, he crawled into his sleeping bag in the spirit artifact cabin and tossed and turned all night. At noon the next day, after eating a tasteless lunch, Duan Yu indeed brought Xiaoyi and the others upstairs. Jojo. Arbor's eyes lit up. Can we go now? Duan Yu nodded. Come. Arbor turned around and patted Little Monkey's and Mo's heads. Little Monkey, you stay up there with your sister and Little Monk. I'll go down and see what's going on. The Little Monkey nodded obediently. Mo and the Little Monk nodded as well. Benefactress, you should put on a few more defensive shells. That way, you'll be safer. This little monk can rest assured that you can go down. Arbor, this little fatty monk was so small, but his words were so eloquent. Arbor expressionlessly waved his hand at the little monk. The little monk also quickly waved his small paws and blinked his large, watery eyes as he watched Arbor go down. He prattled, Benefactress, come back quickly. This little monk will wait for you. Duanyu, why was this little fatty monk so asking for a beating? The two of them jumped into the undersea abyss one after the other. Arbor instantly felt his vision darken. Soon, their surroundings lit up again. Duanyu stuffed an illumination pearl into her hand and pulled her along, sliding down the undersea abyss at lightning speed. Chapter 4960. This place is a bit different from the last time I came in. She remembered that her conscience was very uncomfortable the last time she entered the seabed abyss. Not only did this place have a natural suction force, but it also attacked her conscience. But now, everything no longer existed. It was as if the splitting headache she felt the last time she came in was just her own hallucination. There's a sinkhole below. It was originally an ancient array, but it's been destroyed by humans. Duanyu led her down and paused before saying, it's especially similar to Mo Lien and Rotten Peach Blossom's violent destruction methods. Arbor's eyes brightened, and she saw a very abrupt prism of ice on the ice wall further down. Previously, this area was completely enveloped by the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's wood spirit energy. Although Duanyu and his men had already destroyed it, there were still a few wisps of wood spirit energy drifting back and forth in the air. Arbor followed Duanyu and entered the ice cave below. This ice cave originally appeared to be endlessly deep, but after the ancient array was destroyed, the space also lost its effectiveness, revealing its original appearance. Arbor and Duanyu smoothly reached the bottom of the cave and saw piles of white bones covering the ground, extending all the way forward. The two of them floated slightly in the air and floated forward for a distance. When they looked up, they saw a half-collapsed earthen wall. There was a tattered sign hanging in front of the earthen archway. 4 large, crooked words were written on it, Nation of Sin. The handwriting was simply too horrible to look at. It was obvious that it wasn't written by a cultured person. Arbor and Duanyu looked at each other, bewildered. Duanyu said, the array is behind a pile of broken earthen walls. I'll bring you over to take a look. The two of them circled around to the back. Sure enough, Arbor saw a collapsed array with many messy totems and pictograms drawn on it. Arbor looked away after a glance. She couldn't understand it anyway, so she just looked at Duanyu. Duanyu squatted next to that damaged array and observed it for a while before saying, this should be an isolation and sealing array. This ancient array should be sealing something. Arbor blinked. Now that the array has been destroyed, you mean, the thing inside the array ran out. Your Majesty. Xiao Yi quickly walked in front of him and bowed respectfully. There are discoveries below. Jojo. Duanyu called Sir Jojo, and the two of them followed Xiao Yi around to the back of a broken wall. A huge crater in the shape of a beast collapsed and extended all the way down. From the looks of it, the giant beast had rolled all the way here. Arbor estimated that the beast's body was about 3 meters tall. This shouldn't be the most primitive form of a holy beast. Wu Yi stepped forward and said, Your Majesty, your subordinates speculate that this holy beast has already left the seabed abyss. Duanyu was startled, and he quickly jumped into the crater created by the giant beast with several hidden guards. They followed the craters of varying depths forward. The terrain became lower and lower until a fault appeared in front of them. Under the fault, the glacier stood tall and shimmering. A layer of blue seawater flowed slowly around the glacier. Wu Yi pointed at the fault and said, "Look, Your Majesty. This holy beast should have directly crashed down from here." Arbor stuck her head out to take a look, and half of her body was almost out of the platform. Duan Yu quickly pulled her back and whispered with a frown, "Jojo, stay here and don't move. I'll bring people down to take a look." You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.